in from the North Sea, with perhaps the best of the sunshine down towards East Anglia and the southeastern corner of England. So in the sunshine we will see highs reaching into double figures, so not feeling too bad, but if you're stuck under that cloud, I think temperatures will probably fairly struggle up to 8 or 9 degrees. So into this evening, zooming in across parts of Scotland, we've still got this area of cloud and some outbreaks of rain as we see out Saturday afternoon. For southern Scotland though, some late sunshine here, maybe also some brighter spells developing for Northern Ireland and Northern England. And for the rest of England and Wales, again, probably the cloudiest skies over towards the west, with the best late sunshine across the far east. And very little changes as we go through the course of the night. That area of cloud across Scotland will sink its way a little bit further southwards, but I think the best of the clear skies overnight will be across southern areas. So it's here where we'll probably see the lowest temperatures tonight. Fairly widespread frost across the very far south. Temperatures maybe as low as -4 or -5 in the countryside. But it's here as we start Sunday morning. We'll see plenty of sunshine during the day. It may well cloud up a little bit as the day goes on, but I think throughout the course of the afternoon, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine. Also a little bit brighter for Scotland compared to today. But again, we could just see a few spots in the wind here and there, thanks to the thicker cloud. Temperatures tomorrow very similar to today.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock on Saturday, the 15th of March. I have no idea either. This is the weekend on GB News.
The third of these summits, a coalition of the willing. This one, a virtual one, as the Prime Minister tries to drum up support for boots on the ground in Ukraine's peacekeeping mission and putting the pressure on Vladimir Putin. I'll bring you more details shortly.
And Chancellor Rachel Reeves declares the benefit system is not working for anyone and needs reform, despite fears of a cabinet revolt. Is the government about to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting human rights laws to avoid deportation? Let's hope so, eh? Home Secretary Yvette Cooper launches a major review to stop criminals using the right to family life as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And is society too quick to push young people towards transitioning? Artist Sacha Bailey, son of the legendary photographer David Bailey, believes so. After nearly transitioning himself, he's now warning against the dangers of irreversible surgery. I'm Dawn Neeson, and the weekend starts right here and now. So thank you for joining me this Saturday at lunchtime. Really appreciate your company. We have got an absolutely jam-packed show for you. We have benefits. We have Keir Starmer saving the world. We even have elephants. Yes, elephants. You really don't want to move. Because this show is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today. Or, as I always say, anything you want to have a natter about. It's a Saturday, come on. It's very easy to get involved. You simply visit gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. I say our conversation because I've got a wonderful panel with me today. Two rather gorgeous young men, if I can say that. Probably can't these days, cancel me, whatever. International security and border control expert Henry Bolton. That's a very posh title now, Henry. And former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett. Thank you very much, boys, hey, for coming to join me. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's go to the other girl in the studio, the gorgeous Sophia Wensler, with your headlines.
Dawn, thank you. Good afternoon. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer has said Vladimir Putin will have to come to the table sooner or later after the Prime Minister hosted a virtual coalition of the willing summit for world leaders to discuss peacekeeping in Ukraine.
Putin is the one trying to delay. And in a sense, and you all know this, if Putin is serious about peace, it's very simple. He has to stop his barbaric attacks on Ukraine and agree to a ceasefire. And the world is watching. And my feeling is that sooner or later he's going to have to come to the table and engage in serious discussion.
It comes after the Prime Minister warned Russian President Vladimir Putin he must stop playing games with a ceasefire in Ukraine. It follows President Trump's comments last night in which he warned World War III could easily erupt if peace talks failed. In other news, the Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea has been remanded in custody. Earlier today, Vladimir Motin appeared at Hull Magistrates Court, charged with gross negligence manslaughter in relation to the collision between the two vessels earlier this week. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pernia has been named as the missing crew member, who is now presumed dead. Now, 5 people have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a 40-year-old mother in South Wales. Joanne Penny died after being shot on the 9th of March in Talbot Green. Police said they were considering several lines of inquiry, including that Miss Penny could have been a victim of mistaken identity. 5 people, 2 women and 3 men, have now been charged in connection with her death. And NASA astronauts stranded in space are one step closer to home after a long-awaited rocket with a replacement crew finally launched into the International Space Station. US astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams have been stuck on the ISS for 9 months, having had their journey to come home repeatedly pushed back. The astronauts are due to begin their journey back to Earth 2 days after the new crew arrives. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Right, OK, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? Because we have, as I say, got an absolutely packed show for you. You don't want to move a muscle, seriously. But let's, first of all, go straight to Downing Street to speak with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, as the PM is getting ready to save the world, my words, not his, very shortly. Catherine. Hi, what's happening?
Yes, good afternoon from Downing Street, where the Prime Minister has been convening a summit of about 25 leaders over the last couple of hours. He'll be giving a press conference in about half an hour. We will be bringing you that live on GB News. But fundamentally, this is the third of these summits that have been convened over the last month. There was one Macron did in Paris about 3.5 weeks ago. Then the Prime Minister had one a couple of weeks ago. Now this virtual one today, because events, of course, moving very fast. Let's take a look at first at what the Prime Minister said to other leaders at the beginning of this.
Putin is the one trying to delay. And in a sense, and you all know this, if Putin is serious about peace, it's very simple. He has to stop his barbaric attacks on Ukraine and agree to a ceasefire. And the world is watching. And my feeling is that sooner or later he's going to have to come to the table and engage in serious discussion.
So the leaders on this call from across Europe, also Canada, Australia, the NATO boss, the European Commission, united behind the message to Putin to come to the table. The US and Ukraine have agreed to a ceasefire for 30 days with no conditions. Putin is dragging his heels on this. The purpose of this meeting, threefold. First of all, strengthening Ukraine in the meantime. Secondly, being prepared to defend any deal through what he's calling a coalition of the willing, being led by Britain and France, both of whom have said they're prepared to put boots on the ground for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. And finally, keeping pressure on Russia at this very important time. Will Donald Trump try to sort of force Russia in the way that he did with Ukraine a couple of weeks ago? Because it's clear that the stumbling block now to a ceasefire, let alone a peace, is absolutely Russia.
Catherine, thank you very much. Catherine will be heading in now to see what Keir Starmer has to say, and will be joining us after to bring us up to date on, well, we'll hopefully be taking the press conference live, actually. So we will keep you updated on that story as it happens. Joining me now is political correspondent. Oh, no, we've just had Catherine. OK, so she is not coming back straight away. Right, OK, now, we'll move on. We will come back to Catherine very soon, though. The government is weighing up whether to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting human rights laws to avoid deportation. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has ordered a review into how Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, yes, that one, which protects the right to family life, is being applied in immigration courts. Amid concerns it's being misused to block removal, so to thank it. The review will assess how other European countries, like Denmark, which has one of the most left-wing governments in Europe, by the way, take a tougher approach to legislation. So is it time we did the same? Joining me now is one of our favourite human rights lawyers, and believe me, that's quite hard to say, David Hay. David, thank you very much for joining us. Sorry, I'm in one of those moods today. David, now, this sounds like it could be a good thing. What do you make of what you've heard about this?
I think it's obviously it's clear. It's a good afternoon. I think it's clear it's political posturing. I mean, there's an awful lot of news at the moment about absurd cases. We can go over each one of them. The chicken nugget case, and even saying that is absurd. There's a lot of absurd cases where the Human Rights Act is being abused by multiple people. So I think it's obviously political posturing, but I think it's welcome news, because there is a significant problem, not just in the UK, but across Europe, when it comes to the application of certain of human rights which have been abused, and we need to address that. So I think it's a positive step.
And is it going to be possible for Yvette Cooper to tweak how Article 8 of the ECHR is dealt with? without sort of like dramatically changing the whole deal we have there?
I think it is. I think, because at the end of the day, while a lot of people want to vilify European judges, the majority of decisions that we're seeing are our UK judges, English judges, interpreting the law and applying it here. And obviously, some of them are making quite a lot of mistakes, because you see a lot of cases, particularly cases of deportation of criminals in England going abroad. You see a lot of cases where it's going backwards and forwards between the various different the appeal courts and the various different immigration tribunals. So judges here are making mistakes, and other judges are sending it back to them to reconsider. So we're making mistakes. And this is something that's gone on for more than a couple of decades when you look at the various changes to kind of how we should, what we prioritise when we look at whether we're deporting, for example, a foreign criminal. If we can deport them, whether we prioritise their interest or whether we prioritise the interests of the public in England. And again, the weight on different prioritisations have changed. So it's certainly something that can be done here in the UK.
David, look, you can be honest here. You're amongst friends. Is it our judges making mistakes, or are judges sort of like, the liberal lefty judges that everyone goes on about and are softer on immigration than judges in countries, say like Denmark, which has the most left-leaning government in Europe?
I think, Dawn, you've got both. I think you've clearly got judges that are left-wing or liberal here, and I think you've also clearly got judges making mistakes. So you've got both of them, and I think the judiciary is an area that we do need to look at as well going forward. But absolutely, I think both mistakes and both judges lending their personal opinions coming to things.
I mean, it's obviously the killer question finally, would leaving the ECHR make any difference to us?
I mean, I would argue that it wouldn't, and a lot of people, I think, particularly on your panel, might argue differently to me, but I would argue that it wouldn't. I think, the reality of the moment is that we have a Labour government for the foreseeable future. They've made it clear they're not leaving the ECHR. It may be, I think the Telegraph article that's out today talks about potentially reforming it with others, because obviously it's not just us that's having the problem in the UK, it's all the other European countries that are suffering this.
Yeah, OK, brilliant. David, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to talk to you as well. That's human rights lawyer David Hay, one of the good guys, by the way. So hopefully he's explained that. But the government is considering whether to restrict legal migrants from exploiting the European Convention on Human Rights to block their deportations. You heard David mention there the classic case we had recently of an Albanian, I think he was, who said he couldn't go back to Albania because his child didn't like the chicken nuggets in Albania. We also had the case of I think he was an Indian paedophile, Pakistani paedophile, who was jailed for child sex offences, but escaped removal from the UK because of his own children. OK, so let's find out what my panel make of this one. OK, Henry and Matthew, who wants to go first? Let's go to you first on this one, Matthew. Now, in theory, it sounds like Yvette Cooper is acting more like a Tory.
Well, some may say that. I wouldn't quite go as far. I think it's fair enough in many ways. I think this is particularly the headlines, is the sort of stuff that annoys people, especially when they're feeling a bit down on their luck. And I think there are cases in which I think it's important that we have an independent judiciary and it's away from the politics. But there seems to be a lack of proportionality with some of these cases and, in a way, common sense. I think taking the Pakistani paedophile case, I think the argument was that it would be unduly harsh to his own
words on his own children, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think what's also...
the children of everybody else around him?
Well, I think it's unduly harsh, unfortunately, to be growing up with a dad who's a paedophile as well, I would argue. And I think if someone like that is to stay in this country, how long until it's impinging on other children's human rights, potentially, if that person is that way inclined? And there could be an argument that, as much as I'm not a fan of things like broken families, the child may well be better off growing up without this person in his life. So I think it'll be popular. I think it's interesting. Some of us in the Labour movement were only talking about Denmark's approach to this sort of stuff last week, because to me it sort of spells electoral success. And the one thing that the two things the Labour Party are normally seen as bad on in government is poor on the economy, which Rachel Reeves is doing a nightmare with a look at a potential recession round the corner, and being soft on immigration. I don't think we need to leave the ECHR, and I'm wary of people that sell it as a silver bullet, because we had this with Brexit and we see more people coming to this country in boats and dinghies than we probably ever have before. I think really the Labour government could do worse than investing in a proper deal with the French and have them process there offshore, and that way you're stopping the poor optics of people coming across the channel every day.
OK. Henry, David said that judges are making mistakes in many of the immigration cases. But I did put it to him as well. But the other side is, are they just too soft on migrants who are coming for them? I mean, do you think they put migrants before, the British people? Certainly with people like paedophiles.
I think in an awful lot of walks of life, there is a default position at the moment that we have to err on sort of towards sympathy towards the offender, if you like, in these cases. And I think that's something that's evolved over 20, 30 years, probably. So I think there is a sort of a general culture in our institutions, policing, judicial, civil service, that does lean towards benefiting, if you like, the offender. From a borders background, the reason that nation-states have borders, there are multiple reasons, of course, but primarily it's a point at which you can focus efforts of all natures to protect the interests of your nation, whether it's financial, whether it's health through food standards and so on, or whether it's crime-related and immigration, because those two things go hand in glove. Now, I think that, it's important to say, Matthew, forgive me, but you mentioned Brexit and the increase in the number of people.
He always mentions Brexit,
I know.
by the way. It's
that's fair enough. That's fair enough. But we also have to recognise that actually the only mechanism by which we could return people then, because this is often brought up, was the Dublin III Agreement. Under the Dublin III Agreement, in the 3 years before we left the European Union, actually we had to take more people than we were able to send back. And we're talking numbers, I think in the last year, it was 36. So the numbers are minuscule. What people forget is that in 2014, that whole mass migration from North Africa across the Mediterranean hit the European Union. But I think, the point here is that Yvette Cooper, we all know, and the lawyers know, the courts know, the judges know, the politicians know, everyone knows that this is an issue. And for Yvette Cooper to say, I'm going to hold a review, to me, is just delaying the issue further.
Let's have an inquiry about an inquiry.
Exactly. It's pushing it down the road again. And I started first writing about Denmark's immigration policy over a year ago. Denmark, it's not just this, but they deport foreign nationals. They detain illegal immigrants. If you want to become a citizen, you have to wait 8 years, not 5.
They deport foreign nationals to countries that we don't deport foreign nationals to.
Correct. And you see, this is where I have the problem. The ECHR and the Human Rights Act are used as reasons for obstructing, and I will call it obstructing, the process of deportation and the protection of the safety of the British public. They use that as an excuse, where they don't in other countries, because they understand that the spirit of the law it's there to protect the safety of people. The Albanian who was...
the chicken nuggets man.
Well, no, a different chap.
Oh, a different one.
OK, he was a prolific people smuggler, bringing people into the United Kingdom to work in his cannabis farms. OK, prolific. He's got 3 cannabis farms, I think it was. Prolific drugs producer and dealer, and they wouldn't deport him because his wife is Romanian and she can't speak Albanian, so it's unreasonable to ask her to go to Albania. As far as I'm concerned, if you come to this country and you're given the leave to remain in the country for any period of time, if you commit an offence, and if necessary you sign a declaration, if you commit an offence, you lose all rights to remain here. So does anybody who is here on your ticket. Whoever, their wives or children or whoever. You commit the crime, you pay the price.
Do you think that would be a good deterrent, though, Matthew? I think
if you
whatever law you break, you're out.
Potentially depends on the crime and what I think serious crimes, yes. I wouldn't be against that for the individual. I think
Where would you draw the line?
Well, I think because... Should we be, for instance, if it's a family situation like you mentioned about somebody's wife being Romanian, do we want to punish children who are essentially victims in this themselves just because their mum or their dad have done wrong? Should we punish them from potentially enhancing their life?
Would it make someone think twice about being involved in crime, though, if it was going to affect their children?
At the moment, you can almost stay in the UK because you've committed a crime.
Yeah.
Because you can't be deported because you've committed a crime that back in the country we'd deport you to, you'd be stoned to death or something. Yeah. So you don't want to go back there. You commit the crime here and you stay.
And I think this is where, a review does seem to be kicking the can down the road. I think if you look at the 1951 Convention, a lot of it is in need of an update. We live in a very different world. We live in a much more unstable world than what it was then. And just to go back to absolutely clarify, I wasn't blaming Brexit for the increase in immigration. There's a global issue. There's a whole global issue.
Indeed.
What I'm wary of is the same salespeople of the let's leave the ECHR, similar to Brexit, as if it's a silver bullet, we'll sort things out, and I don't think it will. I think what we need to do, because the current law is, if you are to claim asylum in this country legally, you have to be on English shores, which is why we see people crossing. We can totally do it offshore if we have deals with other countries.
Just one very, very quick story I wanted to mention to you, just get a quick reaction on you. School pupils in Wales, this is, have been taught to plot illegal migration routes from Syria to the UK as part of a geography lesson. Quick reaction, Henry?
Absolutely outrageous. I mean, what muppet came up with that? I mean, no, I'm sorry. That's because the other thing that comes from an expectation that behind that is these poor people in Syria who are trying to leave. I guarantee that's the case. Now, I shouldn't assume that, but I think it's a fairly safe assumption.
The same children were, I think, encouraged to write to their local MPs as part of probably an English lesson, I'm not sure, telling their local MPs that refugees enrich our country.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But back to the geography lesson. Is this a good way to teach geography?
I don't know the full details of it, but I think the framing...
They're being taught to plot illegal migration routes from Syria to the UK as part of a lesson.
The framing of that by the teacher or whatever is very callous, and actually I think in very poor taste. I think if you want to teach about geography, you could totally do it as you and your friends are going on a mission and a treasure hunt, and you need to get from, one part of Europe to maybe Central America, Africa, and you could totally do it that way. I think the framing of refugees in this real-life crisis...
Well, it's back to my point about the overall culture that has been evolving for decades now, where it's the sympathy towards other people. And we should, of course, have sympathy towards people in trouble, but we're...
Charity starts at home.
It does. And, culturally, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're prioritising everybody else, and British government should be putting the British people first.
And very quickly, that's why the convention and other things need updating, because I think we need to draw a parallel between those who are economic migrants and those genuinely seeking
asylum. It takes years to do that.
Yeah, we haven't got years. We haven't even got minutes. We've run out of time on this particular section. I am Dawn Neeson, and this is GBNews. There's loads more coming up, and so we've got to try and squish it all in. Shortly, we're here live from the Prime Minister. Can't wait. Can you? From Downing Street, all of that and much more to come. This is GBNews, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Basically, we know the people behind Bond are the Broccoli family. And for the last 30 years, Cubby Broccoli's daughter, Barbara, and her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, have been looking after the franchise and done very well with it. When you think of what a great Bond Daniel Craig was. Yeah. Now, we haven't had a new movie for 4 years, and now... it looks like Amazon are going to take over the helm, and apparently relations are strained between Barbara and Stephen and Amazon, which to me sounds like even though it's their baby, they've been pushed aside. So they've decided to step back. So now this new guy, Jeff Bezos from Amazon, is asking you who you would like to be the next 007. One name in the papers is Tom Cruise. But he's American.
This is what worries me about Amazon having it, though. It's going to become really Americanised.
Yeah, or very, very woke. I mean, are we going to have a woman playing James Bond?
I don't know if Jeff Bezos is that woke, is he?
Well, no, but Amazon are quite woke, aren't
they? No, they were woke when it was trendy to be woke, and now that we've got Trump in the White House, then they're not going to be woke at all. I mean, it's the Americanisation I worry about, and I do know somebody else who was in for it, who is Ian Fleming's great nephew, who would have kept it in Britain, right?
It should be kept in Britain,
and it's the Broccolis. They were American. Oh, she is American. But, I mean, they were based in Britain. And we want it to stay British.
They'll keep it at Pinewood. Right time.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. So I was slightly distracted there. Henry's been showing me pictures on his camera. Not those sort. He's showing me a picture of a full moon, and him holding a beer. It's that exciting in our lives here. Anyway, welcome back to the Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for joining me this Saturday lunchtime. I hope you've got a beer as well. It's Saturday, why not? Now, earlier, the Prime Minister hosted a video conference from Downing Street with international leaders to discuss support for Ukraine. We'll be going live to Downing Street very shortly to hear him talk about what was discussed. But until we get that very exciting moment, because you know how exciting Keir Starmer can be, those voice coaching lessons, really? Waste of time or what? But I'm just asking the panel now very quickly, and you out there, because I want to know, gbnews.com/you'll say it is all about you. I know it's important, of course we appreciate it's important, but are we a little bit sick and tired of hearing about Ukraine? There, I said it. I'm sorry, someone had to. Matthew?
I think potentially. I think especially when there's talks of a potential deal. I remember working in, and this is not me mentioning Brexit in a negative way again, by the way, I promise you.
You're not going to do the B word again.
No, I think basically because I remember working in Parliament during the Brexit era.
Oh, I did.
And people on all sides were fed up, even to the point where I was thinking, we just need to do something now. And I think the longer this goes on, of the back and forth between Ukraine, Russia, America, us, there's going to be a little bit of fatigue of, right, we just need to settle it now, which may actually benefit people like Vladimir Putin, who may hold all the cards.
I mean, Henry, you have a military background. I mean, you know exactly how important all this sort of thing is. But we are getting a bit weary now, because every morning I wake up and Trump said something more and more outrageous overnight. But I don't even worry now. I just go, it's Trump.
I think, people. There's a certain attention span people have, and in this world, everybody's got enough stress and anxiousness and anxiety and everything else and complexity lumbered on them. But I do think that it's very important for everyone in this country and across the continent to have some cognizance of how serious this could actually be.
So you scare me whenever
well, it is scary.
You scare me.
Well, I think, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And I think the country needs to understand that this is going on. The country does understand it's going on. But there's so much disinformation out there as well, which is dangerous because it misleads people entirely as to what the facts on the ground and in the diplomatic arena are. It does worry me, if I'm honest, that certainly President Trump's the effort, the idea, the principle of trying to end this war is absolutely credible and needs all the support it can get. However, the fundamentals of where he's coming from on this worry me, as does his ability to change course in sort of midstream.
Literally mid-minute.
Yeah, and the Russians at the present are not saying the right things at all. There's the most undiplomatic language coming out of Moscow. Yesterday morning, or was it the morning before, Stephen Witkoff, who is the envoy to Russia, new envoy. He was the Middle East envoy. The actual envoy on the Ukrainian issue had to be pulled out because Russia demanded that he be pulled out. They sent the Middle East envoy instead. He was kept for 8 hours waiting for a meeting with Putin, which the Russians had called for and invited him. And it was, Putin was busy meeting the president, or Lukashenko from Belarus. So Russia is playing games here, undoubtedly. But then, of course they are, because this is still a fighting war. And there's a lot at stake, particularly for Russia and for Ukraine. So I think, the backdrop, the diplomats are going to do their work, the politicians, the leaders are going to do their work, the military will be doing all sorts of contingency planning. We don't need to worry about all of that, because it's constantly morphing and changing and evolving. What we need to just be cognizant of is that this is a very serious issue. We have a superpower in the form of I call it that, of Russia. We were confronting Russia throughout the Cold War. They are a nuclear power. They are huge. Ukraine isn't small. But my point is that this is on the doorstep of Europe, and it is a conflict that we spent the best part of 70 years 80 years trying to prevent, and it is broken out. So we must be cognizant.
I think we have Starmer. Let's have a listen to what he's got to say.
Countries yet behind a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Now, a huge amount has happened since I brought leaders together at Lancaster House here in London. That was just 2 weeks ago. President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. But Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop, and agree to a ceasefire now. And let's be clear why this is so important. Russia's appetite for conflict and chaos undermines our security back here at home in the United Kingdom. It drives up the cost of living. It drives up energy costs. So this matters deeply to the United Kingdom. That is why now is the time to engage in discussion on a mechanism to manage and monitor a full ceasefire, and agree to serious negotiations towards not just a pause, but a lasting peace, backed by strong security arrangements through our coalition of the willing. And we won't sit back and wait for Putin to act. Instead, we will keep pushing forward. So the group I convened today is more important than ever. It brings together partners from across Europe, as well as Canada, Australia and New Zealand, with backing from others too, including Japan. We agreed we will keep increasing the pressure on Russia, keep the military aid flowing to Ukraine, and keep tightening the restrictions on Russia's economy to weaken Putin's war machine and bring him to the table. And we agreed to accelerate our practical work to support a potential deal. So we will now move into an operational phase. Our militaries will meet on Thursday this week here in the United Kingdom to put strong and robust plans in place to swing in behind a peace deal and guarantee Ukraine's future security. President Trump has offered Putin the way forward to a lasting peace. Now we must make this a reality. So this is the moment to keep driving towards the outcome that we want to see, to end the killing, a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and lasting security for all of us. Thank you. I will now take some questions, starting with, I think, Hannah from the BBC. Hannah.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You've said now is the time for concrete commitments. Can you give an example of a concrete commitment that has been made this morning? How many countries have indicated they might put troops on the ground, for example? And a second, if I may, you're doing all of this work on what a peacekeeping force might look like. What if Russia simply won't accept one?
Well, let me start from the premise that a lot has happened, obviously, since we had the meeting at Lancaster House just under 2 weeks ago, particularly developments this week in relation to the position of Ukraine. And the group that met this morning is a bigger group than we had 2 weeks ago. There is a stronger collective resolve, and new commitments were put on the table this morning, both in relation to the coalition of the willing in terms of defending the deal, also in relation to the wider point, which is the collective defence and security of Europe. So more commitments on the table this morning, and an agreement that we now move to the operational phase, which is why the talks on Thursday, the military talks, will become the next focal point. There was a wider agreement this morning, which was that the yes but from Russia is not good enough, and that we agreed collective pressure will be put on Russia from all of us who are in the meeting this morning. So I'd say overall we are successfully gathering political and military momentum. I think more widely there was an appreciation this morning that a wider argument that I've been making that goes beyond just the question of Ukraine is that Europe needs to step up in its own defence and security. And so we moved forward on that front today because some of the commitments that were made were beyond simply the coalition of the willing in relation to making sure that we can defend any deal in Ukraine if one is reached, but also a step up for the collective defence and security of Europe, which is a really important part of the argument I've been making about the era that we're now in. In terms of Russia's position, I think it's really important at this point that we put maximum pressure on Russia. This yes but is not good enough, and that's why the collective resolve this morning was to put pressure, and we can collectively put pressure on Russia. There were a lot of countries represented this morning, a very strong collective resolve. And so I think we've made real progress this morning, and that momentum and that resolve by a number of countries and making sure we continue to be forward-leaning is really important. Thank you very much. I've got Harry from ITV.
Thank you, Prime Minister. What you haven't mentioned today is a US security backstop. Have you concluded that Donald Trump isn't prepared to provide a security backstop? And do you think this coalition of the willing can defend Ukraine without the support of the US? And secondly, if I may, you've talked about a full ceasefire agreement. At the moment, President Putin is suggesting he's not willing to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. What hope have you got of getting a long-term lasting peace?
Well, look, firstly, the position on the US hasn't changed. I've been clear that it needs to be done in conjunction with the United States. As I think you know, we are talking to the US on a daily basis. My NSA was over there yesterday, it just arrived back this morning. So the position on doing this in conjunction with the United States hasn't changed, and that's why we're having the detailed discussions that we are. On your wider challenge that Putin is saying yes, but we need to get him to yes and get round the table. And I do believe we can apply collective pressure to that end. 2 weeks ago, I was challenged on whether we'd even get as far as we've got now. We have moved forward, and that is good. We now need to move forward again. And I think that having a collective resolve, which is a demonstration of the sort of momentum that we're building up now, political momentum, which is important to keep many allied countries on the same page, but also the military momentum, which will go into Thursday's meeting now, which is very much an operational planning meeting. Thank you very much. Sam from Sky.
Sam Coates, Sky News. Prime Minister, I'm struggling to work out what the coalition of the willing actually does on the ground. As far as I understand it, UK troops couldn't fire at Russian troops. If Russian troops opened fire, we couldn't retaliate, and nor could anybody else, because of what that would provoke. So is it just some kind of slightly more tepid training mission in reality? What's the basis on international law? What's the remit? And why couldn't the UN be involved?
Well, the operational meeting is where the discussions are taking place as to what the capabilities will be. I've indicated a willingness for the United Kingdom to play a leading role in this, and indicated that if it's necessary, that will be troops on the ground and planes in the sky. There are different capabilities from different countries, but those are the operational discussions that are going on in relation to what this coalition of the willing will be able to provide. But obviously, we've got to get a deal first, so there's the pressure that needs to be put on to Russia to get around the table, to get the deal. Then there's a question of a ceasefire for a possible short period, and then the lasting peace that we need to see. But if there's going to be lasting peace, there's going to have to be security arrangements. I've been clear and unwavering about this, because we know from history, recent history, that a deal without security arrangements is not something which Putin respects. And therefore it's in all of our interest to make sure the security arrangements are robust enough to defend the deal and to hold the peace. Otherwise, we'll repeat the history of recent years where Putin will breach the line again. Thank you. Caroline from the Sunday.
OK, right, you have been listening to the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, speaking there about the meeting he had today with 25 other heads of countries, including, I believe, Japan and Canada, about the situation in Ukraine and what to do about it. We heard him there, Matthew, say, I think, personally, the most worrying thing I heard him say that is on Thursday there is a meeting of the military from these countries with a military momentum going forward. Now, I'm going to come to Henry, who is a military expert on this, obviously, after. But what did you get from what you heard Keir Starmer say then?
I think if people are frustrated at home, I think we're in for a very long negotiation. I think he was very light on detail when it came to troops on the ground.
He didn't answer that question, did he?
No, certainly not with numbers, and maybe you don't want to show your hand, potentially, but, I mean, we haven't got troops to put on the ground. He spoke about planes in the air, potentially. I thought there was rather clunky language from a sort of comms point of view, calling it Russia's yes-but approach. Many people will not be tuned into this war in the same way that many politicos are, and I think I would probably describe it as more moving the goalposts, or Russia can't have it just its way or the highway sort of thing. I think it's right that he talks about a negotiation for peace, but also a ceasefire. I think there is a difference between a ceasefire and a cessation of hostilities. Russia cannot just get what it wants out of this, and he's right to say Putin should come to the table. I think the other problem, and Henry will, maybe give more detail on this, it's all well and good asking for a security detail, whether that be a minerals deal with the US, and the US saying, well, we've got, an interest in the long-term healthy economy of Ukraine, or whether that be peacekeeping troops, whether that be anything similar. Vladimir Putin doesn't stick to these agreements. We've seen this in the past, and hence why we're in the position we're in. So I think this is going to go on for a lot longer. Vladimir Putin's going to dig in. Inflation in Russia is up to 10%. Their economy is in a mess, but he's happy to go on with this. We're
just going to go back to the press conference now, I understand. Let's hear what Keir Starmer is answering questions from journalists.
To pass. Secondly, on the US and Caroline, I'm sorry, you also asked me about the US. We are obviously talking to the US every day about what happens next. I am clear in my own mind that President Trump is absolutely committed to the lasting peace that is needed in Ukraine, and everything he's doing is geared towards that end. I'm also absolutely clear that the relationship between the UK and the US is the closest of relationships between allied countries, has been for decades and will continue to be for many years ahead. So that's the basis on which we're planning. But it is important and reinforces why we need as many countries as possible thinking together, discussing together and moving forward together as a group, which is what we've achieved this morning. Thank you very much. I've got Dan from Politico.
Hello, Prime Minister.
Dan.
Former White House advisor Fiona Hill, who's working on your defence review, believes that there's going to be a proliferation of countries seeking to obtain nuclear weapons as a result of the combination of what President Putin is doing and the fact that they think that they can no longer rely on the US to come to their aid. So, do you believe that's going to happen? What do you think you can do to prevent it? And if I may, given PIP benefit is not linked to work, how do you square making PIP harder to claim with your stated aim of getting people into work?
Well, on the question of nuclear weapons, obviously our position is that we will do everything we can to prevent any increase in the availability of nuclear weapons. That's been a very clear and consistent position of this government and, to be fair, of previous governments in the United Kingdom. So that remains our position. Look, on welfare, I've made the principles clear enough. We need to support those who need support and to protect them, but at the same time we need to make sure that we support and protect those who need to and are able to get into work, which the current arrangements don't, I don't think, adequately do, and that's why it's important that we make the case for reforming welfare, which is what we're doing. And I've got Anna from the Mail on Sunday.
So the examples of pressure you've given, Prime Minister, are things that the UK has done before and to date, and they don't seem to be working considering the Kremlin's response. How are you concerned about that, and is there anything you're going to do to ensure that pressure is actually more effective, perhaps? Donald Trump has just announced specific travel bans for Russian nationals included. Is that something you're considering?
Well, look, firstly, the effect of the sanctions on the Russian economy have been pretty profound. We shouldn't underestimate the impact that they've already had. And by doubling down and increasing the sanctions, that will cause even more pressure and pain on the Russians, in combination with what President Trump is indicating would be the consequences as he sees it and the action that he proposes to take. So that's quite a combination. On the question of Putin's position of yes, but we need to move that. But just as I stood here in London 2 weeks ago saying we need to move forward, we need to make progress, so I say it again, I don't accept that things are frozen as they are today and that no party can now be moved forward. I don't accept that for a minute. I think that if we've applied pressure, we show collective resolve and some clear-eyed leadership on this, we can move this forward to get the parties round the table for negotiations. And what then needs to come out of that is the just and lasting peace that everybody wants, not least the Ukrainians, and which is very important to the defence and security of Europe, and very important to the United Kingdom, because the impact of what happens in Europe always washes up on our shores, and it's already impacted us quite profoundly in the last 3 years, and that's why I think it's always important to appreciate that what's happening internationally is having a huge impact on us domestically. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, we have just been hearing from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, addressing a press conference about the meeting this morning of the Coalition of the Willing, which was a phrase, I believe, coined during the Iraq War, so maybe not the best optics for that. But that was 25 countries discussing the situation with Ukraine and the fact that Putin hasn't agreed to any ceasefire yet and what was going to be done about it. I have Henry and Matthew on the panel with me. Henry, you are a military man. You were shaking your head and tutting a lot from what you were hearing there. And lots of you were as well, by the way, gbnews.com/you'll say. Please do get in touch and let me know what you've heard Keir Starmer say and what you think of it. Henry, what did you make of it?
Well, as a sort of... well, I'm a bit concerned. Keir Starmer is not a military man. I don't expect him to sort of have all the terminology and so on and to understand the processes involved. But he is the man who is leading the political direction for this in the United Kingdom and clearly trying to have some sort of influence multilaterally. I think that, in general, is a good position to take because it's very difficult for the European Union to do it for all manner of reasons, which we can go into if you want to.
No,
but I think my concern is that he's used terminology there that is a politician's terminology. I mean, this coalition for the willing, you know, means of the willing. It means nothing in military terms. It is a politician's headline. He's thinking about, particularly probably the print media, running headlines. The Prime Minister announces a coalition of the willing. All this great headlines, fine. But what does any of that mean? Well, I think it might be useful to just run through some things.
What does it mean?
First of all, he talks about the operational phase. There is no operational phase at the moment. He also talked about an operational meeting on Thursday. Now, what will be happening there is the political leadership...
the military momentum.
Yeah, forget military momentum. There is no military momentum in the sense that most people would think of it, which is a build-up of forces and we're all getting ready to mobilise. That's not happening. What is happening is that what will have happened in this meeting that he's had today, that those leaders around the sort of virtual table will have agreed to go ahead with developing planning scenarios and also to explore something called force generation issues. So the people asking how big is this force going to be, what it's going to be comprised of, well, partly that would fall out of any agreement because there will be no deployment if there is not an agreement. And the Prime Minister has already said, quite rightly, and the military will be demanding that this is the case, well, they will be wanting it to be the case, that agreement has got to involve the Russian Federation. So you can read into this at this stage that there will be no deployment into the Ukraine of troops from other nations unless the Russians have agreed to such a thing. Now, that would obviously set the conditions, the role, the scope and so on of that mission. It would shape that.
Right.
But on Thursday, what will be happening is the military staffs will be getting together and say, look, OK, our lords and masters have said that they're prepared to do this. How many troops have you got available? How many assets? How many ships have you got? How many heavy lift aircraft? So we know what this train set comprises of. That doesn't mean to say it's all going to be used, but if you want to deploy, you want to support a force, you need to have logistical capability. What have we got collectively? And how much of it is actually available? Because what we've got is not always available. And so that's the force generation element. Now, that's not hard and fast. You will not get a concrete answer out of that as to what this force is going to look like, because, as I say, that's partly dependent on what happens next. But at least the military planners will then be able to tell their political lords and masters what the art of the potential possible is, what we've got in the train set. He talks about pressure on Putin. Look, having negotiated at ministerial level with the Russians on security issues, the Russians will not be listening to anything apart from confronting a brick wall. I think, realistically, just about the only two things that will influence Putin and his decision-making in this is either the risk is too great for him to continue, and I'm talking about military risk, or he has accomplished his objectives. And that's why I think Trump has been talking about Ukraine having to cede territory to Russia. But I think he's misread that. A worry looking ahead is that if there is an agreement, and I hope everybody's thinking about this in Downing Street and elsewhere, is that if there is an agreement, then what's happened before, and the Kremlin has a very thorough track record of doing this, is that they would initiate a false flag type of operation to make it look as though Ukraine broke that ceasefire, giving Russia the excuse to go forward. The Minsk agreement, which people may know about, it was almost designed to give Russia exactly that excuse. So, and I've always been concerned that the peace can be designed in a way that it gives an excuse for further and worse conflict later.
So, Henry, given what we know about how Russia has behaved in the past with this a peacekeeping force along that border, if there is that false flag, then it ceases to be a peacekeeping force.
To an extent, it avoids the false flag, because what happens... Well, first of all, peacekeeping suggests an enforcement role or an observation role. There's something also called peace support missions, which, again, it's not terminology people are used to, but it's a type of military mission in terms of planning that is there to support the parties in a conflict, having sufficient confidence that the other won't reinitiate hostilities, because you've got that third party mediation, observation, transparency function, which needs to have a self-defense capability because it's a difficult environment. But then at least Putin will know that there are observers on the ground who are reporting back to Washington, to Brussels, to Berlin, to London and Paris and so on, saying, you know, whatever the Russians are telling you, the reality is this is what happened. And that can be very, very difficult in that environment. So it's a very tricky thing. My concern about this, though, is that, look, people are asking, and rightly and understandably, you're talking about boots on the ground. You know, what's that involve? And we don't know at this stage, because first of all, you have to have an agreement to allow the deployment to happen, and secondly, you've got to have that fourth generation meeting.
Henry, we have to go now. We will be coming back to this later on, but for now, we are going to take a quick break, but don't go too far. We'll see you very soon.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met. Looking ahead over the coming days, most of us, it should be fairly dry. A mixture of some cloud and also some sunshine, and towards the middle of next week it does look like it will turn increasingly warmer. So out there at the moment, we've still got this area of high pressure firmly in charge. This weak weather front, though, will continue to produce some spots of rain as it sinks its way southwards across Scotland. Across much of England and Wales, it should be fairly dry, clearest of the skies across southeast England, East Anglia, down towards the southwest. So a widespread frost here as we start Sunday morning. Could see lows in the countryside falling down to -4 or -5 degrees. Could also see a few mist and fog patches first thing, but under the mid-March sunshine, they will quickly melt away. So by the time most people are up on Sunday morning, I think plenty of sunshine to greet us. A little bit more cloud for the Midlands, North Wales, and especially so for Northern Ireland, where we could see a few spots of rain courtesy of that weak weather front. But for Scotland, a much brighter story here compared to Saturday. But again, still the risk of a few showery outbreaks of rain coming in from the north from time to time. So moving throughout the day, the best of the sunshine always going to be across southern counties of England. But for Western Scotland, actually here, also a fairly decent day. Elsewhere, I think more in the way of cloud than sunshine, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce the odd spot of rain, but nothing too heavy, really, as we go through the course of the day. Temperatures for most reaching high single figures under the cloud, potentially double figures where we do see the sunnier skies. Into the evening, very little changes, mostly dry, but with more in the way of cloud cover across England and Wales. A less cold night to come here compared to the coming nights, but that will set us up for a fairly cloudy picture on Monday, but then increasing sunshine and higher temperatures from Tuesday onwards.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Well, this is Chris.
This is
Biggins.
the Botticelli's Venus.
Oh,
right?
this gets me incensed. This is unbelievable.
Right.
Woke union chiefs.
But there we are. There's the famous
have
painting.
said that this must be taken down.
The birth of Venus.
This must not be watched. You mustn't look at this.
And there's a trigger warning.
Trigger warning.
As well, right?
Yes.
And I don't know who's put the trigger warning on this. Is it the museum where it's held, or
Some union chiefs.
Oh, right.
Woke union chiefs. I mean, this is
so.
just...
What is the offence now with that? What?
You can see her belly button.
Oh.
And a little bit of her titties. I mean, it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah, the trigger warning is that this painting may involve nudity. Well, it is a Botticelli, it is Venus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to involve nudity.
And there are lots of wonderful paintings that involve nudity. You can't suddenly say now, in 25, you can't look at these.
You'd have to shut down every art gallery in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it would be ridiculous.
We are living in 1984 now, aren't we? I mean, not literally the year, but the whole censorship thing. It's like groupthink, you must do this, you must do that. You can't have independent thought.
Yeah.
You can't look at works of art in case you start thinking the wrong way.
It's just like newsflash, classical paintings will probably have nudity in them.
Yes.
You're right. Angling, and
And compared to what you can see on Instagram.
Well, yes.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Saturday, the 15th of March. I have no idea either. This is the weekend on GB News. Now, your main stories this hour. Chancellor Rachel Reeves declares the benefit system is not working for anyone and needs reform despite fears of a cabinet revolt. And is the government about to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting human rights laws to avoid deportation? Home Secretary Vet Cooper launches a major review to stop criminals using the right to family life as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And now Catherine Forster outside Downing Street for us.
Yes, a coalition of the willing, a virtual call between the Prime Minister and 25 other leaders putting pressure on Russia. The central message is that the yes but from Russia is not good enough. I'll bring you more shortly.
Is society too quick to push young people towards transitioning? Artist Sacha Bailey, son of legendary photographer David Bailey, believes so after nearly transitioning himself. He's now warning against the dangers of irreversible surgery. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you very much for joining me this Saturday afternoon. Really appreciate your company. Now, we have an absolutely packed show. We've already had a packed hour. We heard live from Sir Keir Starmer after his meeting with 25 heads of state from around Europe and indeed the world about the situation in Ukraine and a coalition of the willing and military motivation. Very, very interesting. So much to unpack with that one. So it's very important you get involved in this conversation, because this is all our lives we're talking about, isn't it? At gbnews.com/your say. Let me know what you think about what you've heard Keir Starmer say, what you're worried about, where you think this is going, or even if you just want to bury your head in the sand and think about the football or the rugby later on, I don't mind. Whatever you want to say, gbnews.com/your say, and join in our conversation. I say our conversation, brilliant panel, actually perfect timing today. International security and border control expert Henry Bolton, who is so knowledgeable on this, blimey, just blown my head, and former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett, who is like me going, I don't understand what that bit means. But it's a lot of words. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news with Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your headlines. Sir Keir Starmer has said military chiefs will meet in the UK next week as plans for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine move into an operational phase. It comes after the Prime Minister hosted a virtual coalition of the Willing summit this morning for world leaders to discuss peacekeeping in Ukraine. Representatives from 26 countries were in attendance at the meeting, including Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron. Sir Keir urged world leaders to be prepared to defend a potential peace deal.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, but Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
Elsewhere, the Chancellor has insisted we need to get a grip of the welfare budget as she declared that Britain's benefit system isn't working for anyone. Rachel Reeves' comments come amid growing tensions within government over reported plans to slash welfare spending in the spring statement.
Well, we'll set out our plans for welfare reform, but it is absolutely clear that the current system is not working for anyone. It is not working for people who need support. It's not working to get people into work so that more people can fulfil their potential. And it's not working for the taxpayer when the bill for welfare is going up by billions of pounds in the next few years. So we do need to get a grip. We need to spend more on national defence. We need to reform our public services, and we need to reform our broken welfare system.
In other news, the Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea has been remanded in custody. Earlier today, Vladimir Motin appeared at Hull Magistrates Court, charged with gross negligence manslaughter in relation to the collision between two vessels earlier this week. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pania has been named as the missing crew member, who is now presumed dead. Now, 5 people have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a 40-year-old mother in South Wales. Joanne Penny died after being shot on the 9th of March in Talbot Green. Police said they were considering several lines of inquiry, including that Miss Penny could have been a victim of mistaken identity. 5 people, 2 women and 3 men, have now been charged in connection with her death. The United States has expelled South Africa's ambassador for being a race-baiting politician who hates America. Posting on social media platform X, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said Ibrahim Rasool is no longer welcome in our great country because he hates America and President of the United States. The rare move is the latest development in rising tensions between the two countries. Meanwhile, the Office for South Africa's president said the decision was regrettable, adding that the country remained committed to building a mutually beneficial relationship with America. And back in the UK, Birmingham's ongoing bin strikes are posing a huge public health danger, with rats flourishing on a banquet of rotting food. That's according to pest control experts. On Tuesday, nearly 400 council bin workers in the Midlands City began indefinite strike action as part of a row over jobs and pay. Unite, the union, said the City Council could end the dispute by agreeing to pay a decent rate of pay. However, Birmingham City Council has said the escalation of industrial action will mean greater disruption to residents, despite a fair and reasonable offer made to the members. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Right, now, before we get stuck into the second hour of the show, it is absolutely packed, by the way. A lot of you have been getting in touch, certainly over what you've heard the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, say today about his meeting with the coalition of the willing and military... what was the phrase again?
Momentum.
Momentum. Military momentum. Me neither. In any case, a lot of you are getting in touch already. I'm just going to read a few of them out. Lorraine says, it's about time the Labour government stopped interfering in someone else's war and concentrate on the war. We have been invaded ourselves. When is the King going to dissolve this torturous government? Keir Starmer is a warmonger. Lots of you agreeing with what Lorraine said there. And you, where's your comment gone? And Joe says Starmer needs to stand down, giving it large when he can't even control our own borders. Lots of you agreeing on that one. And another one saying, Catherine Forster is one of your hardest working correspondents. And indeed she is. Now, a short while ago, we did hear from the PM about his plans to stop the war in Ukraine, saying the maximum amount of pressure will be put on President Putin. Yeah. Let's see how that one goes. Joining me now is our hardest-working correspondent. Actually, they're all very hard-working. Catherine Forster. Catherine, OK, well, we heard a lot of words there. I'm not entirely sure many of us understood what was being said, though.
Yes, well, good afternoon from Downing Street, where the Prime Minister has been convening this virtual coalition of the willing, this 25 leaders from across Europe, also Canada, Australia, New Zealand, NATO and the European Commission and Council bosses. This is the third of these summits that we've had in just under a month. It started with Macron scrambling an emergency summit in Paris. I was at that for GB News just under a month ago, following the Munich security conference. Then 2 weeks later, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, welcomed leaders in person at Lancaster House, and now here we are with this virtual gathering. I was just in a press conference with the Prime Minister. Let's just have a little look at what he had to say.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. But Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
So the Prime Minister making it very clear that the block to a ceasefire is Putin, and he said that the yes but attitude from Russia is simply not good enough. Now, in terms of what Europe and other leaders are actually doing, we've heard that they are going to move to what they're calling an operational phase, that military chiefs will be meeting in the United Kingdom this Thursday to discuss how a peacekeeping force in Ukraine might work after some sort of peace deal is agreed. It's worth saying that going back nearly a month, it was only Britain and France at that point that actually said categorically they were willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And for all the involvement of other countries, we don't know yet which other countries are going to do that. But the Prime Minister is interested in getting commitments of whatever sort, and three things they're trying to do, really. First of all, keep strong support for Ukraine. Second of all, work out what part they can play in a peacekeeping force going forward, and also piling on the pressure on Putin for a ceasefire, something that ultimately I suspect is going to be Donald Trump potentially will have to force Vladimir Putin's hand.
Catherine, press conferences are notorious when people just don't simply answer the questions. Many of the journalists asking very, very valid questions there simply weren't answered. As journalists walking out of there, were you frustrated about the response you were getting?
It's often a bit frustrating, to be honest. You ask very specific questions and you find that they say what they want to say. I think In the Prime Minister's defence, there's a lot of countries involved. I think it's fair enough that he's not going to say, I've got commitments from this country or this country for this, that or the other, because that's going to be an announcement that those countries' leaders would want to make to their own people first. But there are so many unanswered questions, not least, even if you have a group of countries willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, under what banner will that be? It's totally unacceptable to Russia that NATO, part of NATO involvement in sort of Eastern Europe, is, according to Putin, partly what led them to invade Ukraine in the first place. Under a United Nations banner, that seems like it wouldn't happen either, because Russia would have a veto on that. It sits on the European United Nations Security Council, so we don't know in what capacity or on what banner that would be. And what we also don't know is what will happen if Putin just continues to drag his heels and basically does not agree to a ceasefire. The Prime Minister was asked very specifically, what is the plan B? We didn't really get an answer. And also on the US, you know, do we 100% know that the United States will have our back? Now, the PM said he's clear in his mind that President Trump is committed to lasting peace, but on what terms? We know that Trump wants peace. Everybody wants peace. Possibly not Russia, but you know, what is Ukraine going to have to give? What is the West going to have to give to get that peace? All of those unanswered questions still.
So many questions indeed. Brilliant job. Political correspondent Catherine Forster. Thank you very much, Catherine. OK, let's see what the panel make of this. I have our Henry Bolton and Matthew Torbett with me. Henry, I'm going to keep coming back to you on this because you are the military expert. You've served in the military. You heard what Catherine said as a journalist, which is... I just was so frustrated by that press conference. I was hearing a lot of words like military momentum, boots on the ground, planes in the air, you know, the guns should fall silent. It's sound bites.
It is. And
I didn't understand what any of it actually meant in reality.
Maybe I could try and rewrite the Prime Minister's words a little bit. What he could have said is, look, we've just had a meeting with 25 European countries and New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Japan, and we have all agreed that, in principle, should the parties to this conflict agree to a ceasefire but require some sort of confidence-building measure on the ground, and should that require some sort of military presence in order to, because it's a volatile situation, to provide for its own self-defence, we would, in principle, be prepared to consider contributing towards that facilitative role, to enable the parties to have the confidence to reach a peace agreement. And for that reason, on Thursday, our military staffs are all meeting in London in order to, first of all, before anything else, figure out what assets, logistical, medical, communications and so on, might be available should we be asked to fulfil that role. That is all that's happening at this stage. And nothing is going to happen, no deployment will take place until and unless there is a peace agreement, and that peace agreement includes Russian agreement to this. And such an agreement is likely to frame, shape the mission, tasks, size, force, constraints of that military presence, should it ever occur. It worries me that he's talking about military momentum. He's got political, diplomatic momentum in terms of building pressure on the Kremlin, which is fine. There is not military momentum. What there is clearly today a political decision to spin up the military staffs to start thinking about the what-ifs. If we were to ask you to do something, what might you be able to do? What's the art of the possible? And what would your concerns be?
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Why didn't he say that? Matthew, the biggest what-if here, though, is what if Putin, who I'm sure was watching that press conference this morning avidly, what if he goes, don't care what you lot do, don't care what you say, I'm just going to carry on?
I think that's incredibly likely, and this is why the problem with a lot of this stuff is it's all if, buts and maybes. And Russia has shown before, particularly under Vladimir Putin, that you can make agreements and they'll break them. They just, or they won't come to the table. I think if you look at the political optics, what the Prime Minister should be coming away showing is that, one, he is in control of the situation. I think, as you alluded to, he was quite evasive in part of that.
Yeah, well, there was one journalist who said, well, what countries are doing what? And he goes, we didn't even attempt. I get there's security issues.
To be fair, he won't know until that he won't have any idea until that meeting on Thursday, probably, when the military people sit down and go, actually, well, look, I know our boss said that we'd provide some logistical aircraft, but we don't have any.
But
They're all
rather
broken.
than saying one, as you alluded to, Emre, rather than saying 100 words, he could have said 10 and said, we all came out of that meeting united, that we all want a ceasefire, we're all going to work together for this, and it must have Russia at the table, and it must also not just throw Ukraine under the bus. I think he also needs to look strong in this position. So, I think if he's talking about Putin needs to be at the table, say, I am willing to meet Vladimir Putin. Show yourself to be the bigger man in this situation and show people at home you're happy to stand up to dictators in this sense, particularly when the language coming out of Washington has been against the natural world order more recently of, we'll sort of give Russia what they want. It's certainly what you could infer from Donald Trump's comments. And I'm not sure he came out with those two things. He doesn't necessarily look in control, particularly with regards to this coalition of a willing, which is a terrible term, by the way. It doesn't mean anything.
I absolutely hate it. I hate it already.
And I don't think he looks particularly strong. And I think, in fact, because of the confusing language, I think it will leave people of this country more fearful and frustrated than in confidence with it.
OK. Right, we are going to move on from this subject, because I know a lot of you are going, please, I can't cope with any more. We will be coming back to it, but, we'll bring it up to date if there are any more developments, obviously. But we are going to move on. There's another big story, and that is the government is weighing up whether to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting human rights laws to avoid deportation. The review will assess how other European countries, such as Denmark, take a tougher approach to legislation. So is it time we did the same? In a way, this is linked to what we've been talking about, because many of you have been saying, well, Starmer putting a peacekeeping force on the border between Ukraine and Russia, or he can't even protect our borders. So there is a link between these two stories. So let's see what Director for the Centre of Migration and Economic Prosperity, Stephen Wolfe, has to say about this story. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us today. OK, it is a crackdown. Is it going to go far enough? What do we need to do? What do we need to hear?
Well, it's not actually a crackdown at the moment. There's a proposal to try and take a view, and that seems to be part of the shtick from the Labour government at the moment. As you've just discussed over Ukraine, he says a lot of words, not actually producing anything that's tangible. The issue is very important, as we know, that in order to stop the boats coming over and deal with the gangs, you do need to look at the legal system as well. And we've cried out for such a long time that we remove ourselves from the European Court of Human Rights, we take down our own Human Rights Act and start removing those pieces of legislation that's in our common law that allow us criminals to stay here when they've been allowed, when we suggested that they should be deported. And you've seen numerous cases recently. So looking at Europe is important. The only really important country that's got any kind of value in dealing with that is Denmark and potentially Sweden. The rest of them still follow the ECHR quite closely.
I mean, this is, Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, reviewing how Article 8 of the European Court of Human Rights guarantees that right to family life. And as you just said, we've heard the most ridiculous case of the Albanian criminal who avoided deportation over the chicken nuggets, the Pakistani paedophile. I mean, these are stories that really make the paper, but there's lots more going on as well that we don't get to hear about. So, I mean, will Yvette Cooper be able to review Article 8 so it starts working in the favour of the British people? Or does it really mean that we do have to leave the ECHR?
Well, in my view, we have to leave the European Court of Human Rights, because what it means in doing so enables us to change our Human Rights Act. And where it really impacts us, to be honest, is because those laws are now embedded in our common law, and we can only remove them by legislation once we've left the acts that they are linked to. Now, what we're seeing is the Conservative Party have already made a claim that they're going to try and deal with the ECHR in relation to immigration cases. So what I'm suspecting now is that Labour are not wanting to be caught short, being soft on crime and soft on those people who should be deported when they are criminals. So they're trying to catch up with the Conservative Party. What we don't see is reform at the moment, matching that in any way. So those two are taking the lead.
Now, is it a case of, we all keep going back to Denmark, it's the leftist government in Europe at the moment, and they seem to have a better handle on this than we do. In fact, they even deport migrants to places like Syria, which we refuse to do. So Are the judges in this country who are making these decisions, are they simply making mistakes, or are they simply too soft? Or is it a combination of both?
Unfortunately, it's a combination that the law has in our common law is ensuring that they have the options to do that. It's not that they're being too soft, it's they're just following the law. And don't forget, Article 8 of the Human Rights Act allows us to remove criminals if they are a danger to the public, a danger to the national health, a danger to ourselves as a whole. So we can use it. What's happened is that lawyers representing these people over periods of time have extended the legislation. And that gives the judges very little wiggle room, because now they have to find something really extreme to keep people to allow people to be deported. Most of them are allowed to stay here because of the extension that's occurred over the past few years.
But just to summarise your view, and until we leave the ECHR, Yvette Cooper can fiddle around with Article 8 all she wants. It's not going to make any difference.
I'm afraid so, and the public doesn't want that. The public wants real decisive action to stop the boats and deal with criminals and deport them.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Stephen. Always a pleasure talking to you. That's Stephen Wolf, our Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. What did you make of what Stephen had to say there? gbnews.com/your say. I suspect many of you will agree with him. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there is loads more coming up on today's show. It is absolutely packed. We do also have elephants at some point, so you don't want to miss that. But on a serious note, the Chancellor has insisted we need to get a grip on the welfare budget, as she declared that Britain's benefit system isn't working for anyone. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Put the kettle on. We'll see you very soon.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this Saturday afternoon, and we've got an amazing packed show for you. But now we are talking something I know really annoys a lot of you. The Chancellor has insisted that we need to get a grip on the welfare budget, as she declared that Britain's benefit system isn't working for anyone. Rachel Reeves' comments come amid growing tensions within government over reported plans to slash welfare spending in the spring statement, because she's got a black hole, remember?
Well, we'll set out our plans for welfare reform, but it is absolutely clear that the current system is not working for anyone. It is not working for people who need support. It's not working to get people into work so that more people can fulfil their potential. And it's not working for the taxpayer when the bill for welfare is going up by billions of pounds in the next few years. So we do need to get a grip. We need to spend more on national defence. We need to reform our public services, and we need to reform our broken welfare system.
Congratulations, Rachel. Got through a whole speech without mentioning the black hole. But with over half the Cabinet reportedly opposed to the plans, because they do sound a bit conservative, don't they? Is it right to be squeezing the welfare state? This is a very confusing story. So, joining me now to discuss it is economist, I can't even talk straight now, and a businessman, Justin Urquhart-Stewart. Justin, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
This is very complex. I gave myself a crash course. Here, I have notes on the benefits system today. I lost the will to live halfway through.
I don't actually know anybody who can actually sit down and explain to you, unless you've actually got a spare 3 days to go through it all with you.
I really haven't, no.
Right, remember, the key issue with this, the problem lies with actually what are people, how do you qualify for this? And you speak to so many people with this, and actually getting a benefit of some kind is actually the easy bit, because what's happening is the system is designed so that the doctor can sign you off. That's the easy thing to do, so the doctor doesn't have to worry anymore. It's now into the system. It has become an industry in its own right. It's not just the doctors, it's not even just people disabled. You look at the number of people involved in the process for all these different benefits that can be obtained, and it turns into its own industry. So who's going to cut it? And the answer is, well, actually anybody in the system doesn't want to, because as far as they're concerned at the moment, it's designed for their own benefit.
Well, I mean, more than half the rise in working age disability claims since the pandemic is related to mental health or behavioural condition. That's according to the official figures. And those account for almost 45% of claims now. The welfare bill has increased by 20 billion since the pandemic.
Now, you just look at the amount of money that we've actually got and actually look at the amount of debt we've actually got to pay. And we can get wound up over government debt the entire time, but that's not really the issue. The issue is actually the ability to be able to use your money you've got coming in. So what you need is to have a mechanism to get more money coming into the system. So if you, in terms of disability, how can you actually reward people, give people awards, not for the disability, but for actually starting and going back to contribute? Those are the people you actually want to get back into some form of work, even if this is state-sponsored work, to actually get them moving from one stage where they are just net beneficiaries into actually this is rights and obligations. These are my rights. What's your obligation? Your obligation is to participate, get a job, and be paying something towards it overall. So
now, this is where Labour are trying to defend this, isn't it? Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, she's expected to cut the top rate of incapacity benefit, which at present means those deemed unfit for any work are paid more than £800 a month, which is twice as much as job seekers. Yeah. So it actually pays you more to be on benefits than actually looking for work and actively. And we have an awful lot of people not working.
And what's happened is that over the years, people have been saying this, and because it's so confusing, no one's actually been able to actually get around it. Now, if you're in a perfect world, you'd sit down and say, right, let's sit down and reform the whole thing now. But we have a certain crisis on our hands at the moment, whereby we've actually got to try and get our finances sorted out at a time when we're being stretched in all sorts of different ways, not least of which in terms of armed forces as well. It is very difficult. The whole system needs evaluation. You're not going to be able to do that immediately. Shorter term, in terms of actually making sure, actually stopping more people coming through the system, is actually making sure the doctors or whoever's doing the signing off are being properly monitored to make sure that the right people are going on it. At the moment, just about anybody can qualify if you can get yourself a better limp.
Matthew, I'm going to come to you on this story because I think you understand this system, don't you? You've got family members who are involved in it.
Yeah, no, I have. We've got a history of disability in the family and people that... I think in society it's very similar. You've got some people in this country that would like to work but are just totally incapable of. I think there has clearly been an increase since the pandemic. I think lockdowns and the way that people were locked away probably has something to do with that. And I think there's something to be said about mental health issues in the sense of I don't think we normalise sadness enough. And as someone that, you know, struggles himself with depression, I think we think everything is depression. And I think we need to normalise that sadness is a normal part of life. We're all going to have ups and downs. And I think because of that, we also need to normalise resilience. Now, I've been to the very bottom of life's mountain and, you know, thought about ending it all and tried to end it all. Now, the reason that I didn't is because of support, and I think that's what needs to come with this wider sort of savings or cuts. There needs to be a package of support to help those, tailor-made, to help those that would like to work but currently can't for whatever reason, to try and get them to a point that they can. Because I think if you can work in this country, you have a moral duty to do so, and we all pay into that national insurance pot for each other to benefit from. And I think that's where the government might miss out. I think the savings that they will make potentially are going to come at the cost of some very vulnerable people.
As I say, that, you know, we were running out of time. Just quickly, I mean, the Department of Work and Pensions consider too many people with minor mental health problems, which is what you alluded to, like anxiety, are on personal independence payments, which is pushing up the bill, when really they should be helped back out into the workplace, which would probably help their anxiety and depression.
No, I think so. And listen, you know, there's something to be said, having been on both sides of that having a routine of work and a job that pays well and treats you well is a lot better than rotting away in bed. But there is also the other element of if it is such severe anxiety, and we're talking real end of the spectrum, that can actually be quite physically debilitating as well, and that's where the mental meets the physical. But absolutely, the support has to be there within the welfare state.
Very briefly, Dawn, very briefly. One of the other things is that's a treatment of something that's already happened. We are piling complexity and stress and anxiety onto the population at large. Life is becoming more complicated, more difficult to navigate, and taking more and more time away from people's sort of precious time, work time, domestic time, family time, and everything else. And it's becoming more expensive. And they cannot cope. So a lot of this, the anxiety does exist. We're paying for it in the form of benefits and lost work, but we've got to address that underlying unhappiness in society that is being created by all of this bureaucracy.
Prevention over cause every time.
Sorry?
Prevention over cause every time.
Gentlemen, we have run out of time. Justin, thank you very much for joining us there. OK, now we have run out of time, but there's loads more coming up on today's show. I'm Dawn Leeson, this is GB News. We are going to ask, is society too quick to push young people towards transitioning? Big debate there as well, a very toxic one. But first, let's get the news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Your headlines at 1:35. Sir Keir Starmer has said military chiefs will meet in the UK next week as plans for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine move into an operational phase. It comes after the Prime Minister hosted a virtual coalition of the Willing summit this morning for world leaders to discuss peacekeeping in Ukraine. Representatives from 26 countries were in attendance at the meeting, including Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron. Sir Keir urged world leaders to be prepared to defend a potential peace deal.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, but Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
In other news, the Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea has been remanded in custody. Earlier today, Vladimir Motin appeared at Hull Magistrates Court charged with gross negligence manslaughter in relation to the collision between the two vessels earlier this week. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pania has been named as the missing crew member, who is now presumed dead. Now, 5 people have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a 40-year-old mother in South Wales. Joanne Penny died after being shot on the 9th of March in Talbot Green. Police said they were considering several lines of inquiry, including that Miss Penny could have been a victim of mistaken identity. 5 people, 2 women and 3 men, have now been charged in connection with her death. And a wave of protests against Elon Musk's Tesla have begun spreading to Britain amid a growing backlash over the billionaire's support of Donald Trump. Protesters have gathered outside a Tesla dealership in London today, calling for people to boycott the Elon Musk-owned electric car maker. It's part of a series of Tesla takedown demonstrations that have become frequent in the US. A small group of demonstrators at the centre in Park Royal, West London, held up banners that read "Honk if you hate Tesla" and "Enough fascist nonsense." Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
What's your take on this then? Because my understanding is that you feel a bit disadvantaged as a result of the CGI characters here.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's taken away from people like myself who are professional actors, and these roles are made specifically for us. You know, we've got dwarfism, and it can boost our career, make money to pay for our families, and it's just an opportunity that's taken away from us because they're afraid of stereotyping or being derogatory, which is absolutely not.
Yeah, and this is not just in this film, it's actually happening quite regularly, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, because it came out a few years ago with Peter Dinklage saying that it was being stereotyping, having dwarfs playing dwarfs for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And it's really wrong for people to say that. He's made his career, he started off doing that, and he's made a very big career out of it, and you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a big stepping stone for a lot of people with dwarfism.
Yeah, and look, I suppose in any acting, in a way, like, if someone is playing a character of a very tall person in a biopic, you would presumably pick a very tall person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really see why it's that controversial.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, it's absolutely pointless. I don't know what they're trying to get at, but I think it's this woke culture. They're afraid of upsetting someone, and, if we didn't want to do it, we wouldn't do it, but it's very well paid, it's a lot of fun, and it's what we love to do.
And you have actually been in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs previously.
I've been in it twice for pantomime.
Fantastic. And that was you, and you just enjoyed that. I mean, that was, presumably, that gave work to quite a lot of actors with dwarfism.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many actors around the UK and around the world that do it, and it's so much fun. The kids have a great experience, and it's really important for them to be educated, because then they understand that there's different people with types of dwarfism, so they're not afraid when they see someone like that, because some people grow up and they're like, well, what's up with that person? But they start to understand the differences.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company this Saturday afternoon. Now, Sacha Bailey, son of iconic photographer David Bailey, was on the brink of transitioning. Now he's about to become a dad. He says vulnerable young people are being pushed down a path they might regret. Are society's pressures and social media glamorising gender transition, and should we be more cautious before encouraging life-altering decisions in young young people. Huge questions here. We're joined now by diversity and inclusion facilitator Katie John Wen. Katie, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, this is a huge debate, incredibly toxic. I mean, you are one of the sensible voices on this one. What do you make of what Sasha's had to say today?
Well, Sasha is describing his journey, and in that sense, it's entirely right. It's entirely personal, and they were saved from doing something that would have been wrong for them. Absolutely. But I think one thing that's missing, as you called it, a toxic debate, is the compassion to the individual versus the kind of what you might call the toxic ideology side of it, where there's two sides of fences and people are literally throwing words and more at each other. But when you look at an individual person's journey, and if that person takes the time to come out with the right decision, then that is the best thing for an individual. And it's treating, say, trans people or people who think they may be trans as one homogenous, generalised group with a whole series of stereotypes. That doesn't help. But if you treat people as individuals and within, say, the mental health system, compassionately taking time and giving them the option to see, is this the right thing for you? For me, it was very much the last resort, and I tried everything else first. And, and I took an individual journey. I didn't take, therefore, a stereotypical journey.
Were you an adult when you started having...
Well, I started having the thoughts probably from when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm 58 next week, so that was a long time ago. And I transitioned in my 40s, so I thought about it in my head for 30 years. But there was no social media, there was no internet. So there were none of those external stimuli. There were no kind of even the role models of it. I mean, Sasha talks about more people potentially becoming trans because of Bruce/Caitlyn Jenner. I don't think that was the case, because actually most trans people were really annoyed by Jenner, saying they were the wrong kind of trans. And there's also that thing as well, is the fact that, as I say, trans people aren't a homogenous group, and there's diversity of viewpoint within, but we only tend to hear about one kind of viewpoint, the activistic viewpoint. And the diversity within shows that there are many different ways of expressing yourself as a human being. And for some people, the dysphoria related to that might be so extreme that transition might be an answer.
How do you feel, though? I mean, Sasha's point is that, society's made something that's harmful to children, the physical transitioning, like, puberty blockers. I mean, young girls having their breasts removed, which, are fertility issues for the rest of their lives. I mean, Sasha's saying in the UK, sex education is starting younger and younger and getting stranger and stranger. Kids should just be kids and shouldn't at all be shown the transgender option at all. I sometimes thought I wanted to be a girl when I was 11, but I also wanted to be a cheetah. If you go down this route, it gets to very silly places very quickly. How do you feel about the fact that children, very young children now, are being given this transgender information? Maybe we should just let, as he said, kids be kids.
To some extent, I do agree with the whole kind of let clothes be clothes, let kids be kids, let toys be toys, those various kind of campaigns we've had over the last, few years. I don't think there should be zero education and information, but I think there should be zero indoctrination. And that means repitching it instead of, hey, these are some of the options ahead of you, including being trans. How about just pitching, there are hundreds of millions of ways of being a girl, hundreds of millions of ways of being a boy. Go be a child. Go be a teen. And if you need to adopt gender-neutral language, then say child and teen. And just be, in that sense, and have the freedom to be, the tomboys. I mean, I remember when I was 4 and 5, the people I played football with and climbed trees with were girls. When I was a 5-year-old, I didn't want to play dress-up, as a princess or anything else like that.
I'm escaping.
It wasn't about that. There was a social belonging dynamic. There was a difference to and it wasn't about becoming a different gender because of the way girls were treated. It was particularly better. It was worse, So those kind of incentives that Sasha talks about, I think, are kind of a little bit more kind of social media influenced. The reality in the 1970s, again, was you actually just literally were a kid. But for some people, gender dysphoria was the exception. But it was also like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 people, not 1 in 50 people. So there is that difference of demographic.
Let's bring my on this one. And the UK has seen a huge increase in the number of under-18s referred to NHS Gender Identity Service. Henry, what do you make of this? I mean, should kids be kids, or are we giving them too much information that can influence how they're feeling?
Well, I agree entirely that we should be encouraging kids, to be themselves, not to be one thing, not to be another, not to question themselves, not to what do I want to be? Oh, I didn't know you could be this or that, because that, in a sense, is a form of encouragement. I don't think we need to be provoking those thoughts. If a person is themselves and we encourage them to be themselves rather than be shaped by external influences, whether it's peer pressure or social media or whatever, and activists. I think activists in that sense do a huge amount of harm, then they will grow up in the way that they're going to grow up. And as you say, they'll express themselves how they wish to express themselves. It's when that's shaped by external influences that I have the problem. And I think, sort of, the age thing is, OK, when's a kid not a kid? I mean, you can't just arbitrarily say, 16, 18, whatever. I think that... but I think 9 is far too early, because you can think all sorts of things about what you want to be when you grow up.
Said he wants to be a cheater at one point.
Exactly, but you can think whatever. But at what point, actually, are you able to make... You've got the worldly wisdom and experience to know, to sort of grow through all of that, and then come out of that and go, actually, yeah, I want to be a fighter pilot, I want, to be a woman or a bloke or a whatever, or transition, whatever it may be, then that should be a natural evolution, not one that... And I think we should block it at childhood. It shouldn't be 9-year-olds or even 14-year-olds.
Let's just sorry, we're running out of time, as usual, always on this one. Matthew,
to
just a quick response from you.
I think it's very complicated and nuanced, and we've all been kids, we've all been teenagers. It's a very confusing time. I think they will access the information regardless, because the internet is a gateway of information. I think the main thing is what's already been alluded to, is compassion, is listening to people, and amplifying voices like yours, I think, because it may be the difference between somebody feeling so suicidal in who they are and going through with that, or going, that's exactly how I feel. I think I finally know who I am, or maybe who I'm not, actually. So I think just listening and compassion is the main thing I would always put forward in this sort of conversation.
But that translates to a 9-year-old saying that, and then somebody saying, well, you can be.
We are run out of time. Katie, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. That's Katie John went there talking to us about the trans. Now, if you are in search for some winter sun, and who can blame you for escaping the madness that we're currently in, here is a forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations for you.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Storm Lawrence brings some unsettled weather across western parts of Europe, heavy rain and some thunderstorms. A little more settled across parts of Greece, but temperatures are going to cool off. Highs of around 20 to 21 Celsius on Sunday, but turning much cooler through the middle part of the week. As we head further west, we can see there's plenty of showers, some of these heavy bringing in some thunderstorms, and Storm Lawrence just this low out across the Azores, bringing in some heavy outbreaks of rain later on Sunday and into Monday. Largely settled through the middle part of the week, but turning cooler for Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the rest of this weekend, most of us, it should be fairly dry, a mixture of cloud and sunshine out there. But under the cloud, it is still going to be feeling fairly chilly. So we've got this area of high pressure really firmly in charge across the UK, but this weather front across Scotland will be an area of cloud and some patchy rain. But away from that zone, really, it's a fairly quiet day. You could just see a few showers just coming in from the North Sea, with perhaps the best of the sunshine down towards the East Anglia and the southeastern corner of England. So in the sunshine, we will see highs reaching into double figures, so not feeling too bad, but if you're stuck under that cloud, I think temperatures will probably fairly struggle up to 8 or 9 degrees. So into this evening, Zooming in across parts of Scotland, we've still got this area of cloud and some outbreaks of rain as we see at Saturday afternoon. For southern Scotland, though, some late sunshine here, maybe also some brighter spells developing for Northern Ireland and Northern England. And for the rest of England and Wales, again, probably the cloudiest skies over towards the west, with the best of late sunshine across the far east. And very little changes as we go through the course of the night. That area of cloud across Scotland will sink its way a little bit further southwards, but I think the best of the clear skies overnight will be across southern areas. So it's here where we'll probably see the lowest temperatures tonight. Fairly widespread frost across the very far south. Temperatures maybe as low as -4 or -5 in the countryside. But it's here as we start Sunday morning. We'll see plenty of sunshine during the day. It may well cloud up a little bit as the day goes on, but I think throughout the course of the afternoon, that's where we'll see the best of the sunshine. Also a little bit brighter for Scotland compared to today. But again, we could just see a few spots in the wind here and there, thanks to the thicker cloud. Temperatures tomorrow, very similar to today.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. You've got a nice pint in front of you because we're going to talk sport, and that's what you do, isn't it? Have a pint while you're talking about sport. Aidan McGee, who hasn't got a pint, but you're still going to talk about sport. Aidan,
won't be long.
Big sporting weekend.
Yeah, huge day of Six Nations action today. 3 teams at the top of the group, or the Six Nations, if you like, the tournament, have a chance of winning it, sweeping all before them today. And first out of the blocks, we have Ireland trying to beat Italy in Rome. Huge invasion of Irish fans over there, looking to make it a big day. Finish with a flourish. But if they and England both win, that means that England gets... well, it means that the competition is still alive when France kick off against Scotland tonight at 8 o'clock. France have to beat Scotland, simple as that. If they do, well, actually, they don't have to, because if the other two don't win, then that leaves the door wide open for them, and it could just be a processional match.
So who's it between? Which 3 is it between?
France, England, Ireland. France on 16 points, England on 15, Ireland on 14. It's as simple as that. But let's hope both teams can win going into it, so it makes tonight's match interesting. What do we want as sports fans? We want competition.
Yeah.
We want to see teams fighting against each other, being made to sweat for every point, every victory. Ireland blew it last week, really, by losing at home to France. No disgrace in that, but if Ireland really were the best team in the Northern Hemisphere, they didn't prove it last week.
We wanted to go to the wire. We want all sport to go to the wire. So let's talk about football.
Yes.
And England. And
yeah. Look, I mean...
a few surprises there.
Yeah, a few surprises. Rashford back in, good form at Aston Villa, coming off the bench, showing really direct play. Somebody can take players on. And also, he's actually done very well in an England shirt. And Tuchel probably thinks it's a bit rough for him to be dropped. Jordan Henderson back in. I think there was a problem with leadership. Not so much on the pitch, maybe off the pitch. We saw a few problems surfacing behind the scenes, didn't we, last summer at the Euros. I think he wants to stabilise the influence there. I'm not convinced he's going to play very often. And then there's Reece James. Hasn't really done anything for Chelsea for 2 years, but Tuchel remembers this magnificent player that he was there, and he thinks, I'm going to be the coach to restore him to greatness. And so he's given him a chance with England. And then Aaron Ramsdale in goal. Look, he's played well for Southampton. He's had more shots at him than anybody else. This is the worst team in the league. But 3 relegations on his CV at the end of the season. And do we really need 4 goalkeepers in one squad. Morgan Gibbs-White left out at Nottingham Forest. What a season he's had. He'll get his chance eventually. But also, Dawn, we're playing this guy, Thomas Tuchel, big bucks. He's got 18 months to deliver a World Cup. Let's having backed him with the money and all the other support, let's back his decisions
and
as well.
And if he does well, he'll sing the national anthem for us as well.
Without doubt. Sing when he's winning.
Yeah, exactly, which is a good one. And finally, a bit of F1.
Yes, that's right. Lewis Hamilton finished 8th in qualifying this morning. Not probably what he wanted, although he did kind of predict it. For a 40-year-old man to go into a great car and try and take on somebody who's won 4 in a row, going for a 5th, Max Verstappen, I think personally is pie in the sky.
Oh, right, OK. And the Grand Prix is tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning, yeah, in Grand Prix. Grand Prix in Melbourne.
Melbourne, Australian Grand Prix. Well, see, I understood that bit. Aidan, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. OK, there was loads more coming up on today's show, so you don't want to move a muscle, but you can get another bit if you want. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with you very soon.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Wanted. Hello, there you are. Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Saturday, the 15th of March. I had to remember that. This is the weekend on GB News. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your company. Now, on the latest from the war in Ukraine, let's cross to Catherine Forster straight away.
Yes, this is the 3rd meeting of a coalition of the willing, this one virtual, putting the pressure on Putin, working out how they might get a peacekeeping force following a peace deal. The Prime Minister saying that Russia's yes but approach to a ceasefire is just not good enough. I'll bring you more details shortly.
Yeah, more on that story coming up, yes but no but. Meanwhile, Chancellor Rachel Reeves declares the benefit system is not working for anyone and needs reform despite fears of a cabinet revolt. And is the government about to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting human rights laws to avoid deportation? Home Secretary Yvette Cooper launches a major review to stop criminals using the right to family life as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And is society too quick to push young people towards transition? Artist Sacha Bailey, son of legendary photographer David Bailey, believes so. He'll be live on Nana's show at 5:20 this afternoon, so you really don't want to miss that one. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. And blimey, actually Mum said I shouldn't use that word on telly, it's not posh enough. Golly gosh, we have got a packed show for you this afternoon, so you really don't want to move a muscle. We've got all bases covered, we've got benefits, we've got Putin, we've got Starmer, we have even got elephants. But this show is nothing without you and your views, so let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today. It's really, really easy to get involved, and I will read as many out as I can. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join in our conversation. Saying our conversation because I have two wonderful young men with me. International security and border control expert Henry Bolton. Young, yeah, well you are compared to me, Henry, everybody is, shut up. And former Labour advisor Matthew Talbot, who is genuinely young. Okay, but before we get, oh God, she's even younger. Before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news with the very gorgeous Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. It's just gone 2 o'clock. Your top story this hour. Sir Keir Starmer has said military chiefs will meet in the UK next week as plans for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine move into an operational phase. It comes after the Prime Minister hosted a virtual coalition of the Willing Summit this morning for world leaders to discuss peacekeeping in Ukraine. Representatives from 26 countries were in attendance, including Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron. Sir Keir urged world leaders to be prepared to defend a potential peace deal.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, but Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
Elsewhere, the Chancellor has insisted that we need to get a grip on the welfare budget as she declared that Britain's benefit system isn't working for anyone. Rachel Reeves' comments come amid growing tensions within government over reported plans to slash welfare spending in the spring statement.
Well, we'll set out our plans for welfare reform, but it is absolutely clear that the current system is not working for anyone. It is not working for people who need support. It's not working to get people into work so that more people can fulfil their potential. And it's not working for the taxpayer when the bill for welfare is going up by billions of pounds in the next few years. So we do need to get a grip. We need to spend more on national defence. We need to reform our public services, and we need to reform our broken welfare system.
In other news, the Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea has been remanded in custody. Earlier today, Vladimir Motin appeared at Hull Magistrates Court, charged with gross negligence manslaughter in relation to the collision between the two vessels earlier this week. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pernia has been named as the missing crew member, who is now presumed dead. Now, 5 people have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a 40-year-old mother in South Wales. Joanne Penny died after being shot on the 9th of March in Talbot Green. Police said they were considering several lines of inquiry, including that Miss Penny could have been a victim of mistaken identity. 5 people, 2 women and 3 men, have now been charged in connection with her death. The United States has expelled South Africa's ambassador for being a race-baiting politician who hates America. Posting on social media platform X, the Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, said Ebrahim Rasool is no longer welcome in our great country because he hates America and the President of the United States. The rare move is the latest development in rising tensions between the two countries. Meanwhile, the Office for South Africa's president said the decision was regrettable, adding that the country remained committed to building a mutually beneficial relationship with America. A wave of protests against Elon Musk's Tesla have spread to Britain amid a growing backlash over the billionaire's support for Donald Trump. Protesters have gathered outside a Tesla dealership in London, calling for people to boycott the Elon Musk-owned electric car maker. It's a part of the series of Tesla takedown demonstrations that have become frequent in the US. A small group of demonstrators at the Tesla Centre in Park Royal held up banners that read, "Honk if you hate Tesla," and "Enough fascist nonsense." And NASA astronauts stranded in space are one step closer to home after a long-awaited rocket with a replacement crew finally launched to the International Space Station. US astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams have been stuck on the ISS for 9 months, having had their journey home repeatedly pushed back. The astronauts are due to begin their journey back to Earth 2 days after the new crew arrives. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Now, before I get started on the last hour with us, it's packed, but I just want to read this message out because a lot of you are agreeing with this lady. This is a message come in, gbnews.com/you're safe, by the way, from someone called British Lady. I'm going to read you what she says. She goes, "I believe both Donald Trump and Putin respect each other. Who in God's name can respect Keir Starmer, who allows a South Coast invasion of fighting-age men, who despises Christians and Jews, financially cripples British farmers, jails folk for carrying placards and using hurty words, takes money from pensioners, waspy women and military widows, a government more concerned with housing and the welfare of illegal migrants but the folks of this land, the worst action of knee-bending to a Marxist outfit and allows anarchists to destroy our statues and not condemn them." Now, very, very strong opinion. I read it out because lots of you are agreeing with that. Lots of you think that our current Prime Minister, despite his fighting talk today about protecting Ukraine, is letting British people down. gbnews.com/your say. Let me know if you agree with a British lady. I'd love to know your proper... It helps if you put your proper names on then I feel more comfortable reading them out. But, yeah, let me know if you agree with that comment. Now, we move on. A short while ago, we heard from the Prime Minister, yeah, that one, about his plans to stop the war in Ukraine, saying the maximum amount of pressure would be put on President Putin. This comes as the PM says military chiefs would meet in the UK on Thursday, planning for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. Joining me now is political correspondent Catherine Forster, who was at the press conference today and understands exactly what's going on, don't you, Catherine?
Well, I try. Yes, good afternoon from Downing Street. There's a pro-Palestinian protest at the end of the road, so I hope you can hear me okay. Forgive any background noise. But yes, so the Prime Minister this morning in Downing Street behind me convened what he called the Coalition of the Willing. It turns out to be a group of 29 European countries, plus Canada, plus Australia, New Zealand, NATO, the European Commission and Council, all talking about how they can help Ukraine and how they can, once we get to some sort of lasting peace settlement, how they can help to maintain that. Let's have a little look, first of all, at some of what he said in the press conference immediately following that meeting.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, but Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
So a clear message from the Prime Minister and from the leaders meeting virtually here that the yes but approach from Russia to a non-conditional ceasefire for 30 days is simply not good enough. So what they've been talking about this morning, threefold really. First of all, getting firm commitments to support Ukraine going forward at the meantime. Second of all, for putting in place plans for some sort of peacekeeping operation once that lasting, we hope, settlement is reached, whether that's boots on the ground in Ukraine or planes in the sky. We know so far that both France and Britain have said that they're willing to put boots on the ground. We had that announcement back nearly a month ago, actually, at the first of these summits in Paris, which I was there for GB News. We haven't heard which other countries, if any, are saying that they're going to meet that. But he said that they've had new commitments, bigger and stronger commitments, and that military leaders will be meeting this Thursday in London to move to what he's calling an operational phase. And also they're planning for how to put more pressure on Russia to agree to a ceasefire, more sanctions, and potentially seizing those frozen Russian assets. Now, this is something that is complicated, but they have not ruled that out. Worth saying, too, on the United States, that the Prime Minister says he's clear that President Trump is committed to a lasting peace and that they still do want that security backstop, that action taken by Europe, he says, must be done in conjunction with the United States.
Catherine Forster, a joy as always talking to you, even when you've got those lots screaming in your ear rolls. Thank you very much for joining us, and if you could just go and tell them to shut up, that'd be great as well. Catherine Forster there, thank you very much. Right, OK, Putin will have to come to the table, says Keir Starmer. We have a military expert with us today, which I'm very pleased about, Henry Bolton. Putin will have to come to the table, will he?
No. He'll come to the table when he's good and ready to do so. I suspect that will be when he's either achieved his military goals on the battlefield or when the risk in other areas, it might be military. For example, President Trump could get so irritated with him, he says, right, if you don't do what I'm asking you to do and agree a ceasefire, then I will back Ukraine to the hilt and give it what it needs to push you out of the country.
Where does that end? What happens then? If Trump
well, I mean, that's an
loses patience
escalation.
and goes, right, okay.
That's an escalation. And that's what I fear about this, and that's what I've said all along. If you get the approach to bringing peace about wrong, you could set the conditions for an escalation in the conflict or a further and worse conflict later. And that's what I'm concerned about. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but there is a danger in this, because where is this? If Putin does not come to the table, what is the point of leverage? Look, we've got sanctions, and nobody's going to... Whatever additional sanctions we apply are not going to make a big difference to President Putin. They might make a bit of a difference to the ordinary Russian people, but in Russia, that's not the consideration. The only thing... He's cozying up to China, North Korea, he's got exports going to India and Mongolia. The Russian economy is, yes, under stress, but that's not because of sanctions. It's because about 40% of the national budget is being spent on defence. So that's his own decision. He can change that decision. He can move the deck chairs about a bit. I think the only thing that he would listen to is risk on the battlefield. And President Trump has made it repeatedly clear that he's not prepared to use American weight in that sense to influence the situation. Now, I've said it before earlier in the programme, but for people who've missed it, I mean, the Prime Minister has talked about military momentum. He's talked about an operational phase. He talks repeatedly about boots on the ground. And I just want to reassure people, there will be no deployment unless there is a peace agreement. And that peace agreement has to include the Russians. So the Russians have to agree to that deployment. And that agreement, whatever form that agreement takes, if it ever happens, will shape the task, the roles, the responsibilities, and indeed the powers of such a force. And it would only be deployed in what I would call peace support role, to enable the two parties to have the confidence that the other one's not going to resume hostilities. That, of course, puts them a little bit in harm's way, but it is not a war-fighting role. This is not the United Kingdom and others saying, we are prepared to put troops on the ground to fight the Russians. That is not what this is about. And people should be reassured about it. I'm afraid the Prime Minister is using unwise, inaccurate terminology when he's talking about this. He's a politician, and he doesn't necessarily know the impact of what he's saying.
Actually, but how good a politician is he? We were just discussing this, Matthew, when he was talking about Putin, but then he goes, oh, Vladimir Zelensky. That isn't the language of a diplomat, really, is it?
No, it's not diplomatic. It's going, we're in the side of Ukraine, which will win him some plaudits, but ultimately it will. I think the Trump parallel is interesting as well, because it will any deal will be done with Russia there. Well, it's going to be down to America as well. Whatever Donald Trump decides to do, he could throw... Because you have to remember, he's placed a lot of his presidency on this. You know, he said, I'll end this in 24 hours or a week or whatever it was. He said he's going to end all the wars. And at the moment, he hasn't, and that's making him look a bit daft to his base. So he could get fed up with Putin. Could he water down, his support for Ukraine even further to sort of appease Putin and get him round the table? I don't know. But my concern for Keir is he looked a little bit impotent at the press conference today, rather than
you
strong.
are Labour.
No, I am. And listen, I'm a critic of Keir Starmer, but I'll always aim to be fair. I just think he didn't provide the answers that I think the public would feel confident and comfortable with.
It's difficult for him. I'm not a Labour fan, and I'm certainly not a Keir Starmer fan, and I hate his domestic policy. But it is difficult for him because this is a negotiation between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, facilitated, driven by the Trump administration.
Yes.
We're out of it. What I think Keir Starmer and the European allies are trying to do, and Canadians, Australians and so on, is try to position themselves so that say, look, if we can play a useful role in facilitating any agreement working, then we will do so. But at the same time, because it's on our doorstep, we're trying to say we also want to make sure that this conflict doesn't spill over and escalate.
OK, we are going to move on now. I know, Henry, you're so brilliant on this subject. We could listen to you for hours, but sadly we don't have time. Because we have got another subject that we want to talk about, which is linked, and a lot of you are alluding to it, about Keir Starmer talking about protecting Ukraine on the border, can't even protect your own country. But now the government is weighing up whether to crack down on illegal migrants exploiting the human rights laws to avoid deportation. The review will assess how other European countries, such as Denmark, take a tougher approach to the legislation. So is it time we did the same? Joining me now is former Conservative Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Kevin, thank you very much for joining us. OK, so we have Yvette Cooper talking about our cracking down on Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Is she going to achieve anything?
Well, it certainly makes sense to do so. We've seen some absolutely bizarre judgments under this article. And let's remember, this article was drawn up just after the Second World War to try and stop laws like the Nazis used to stop Christians marrying Jewish people. So, you know, that's what it was meant to do. And we're now seeing instances like people can't be deported because their children like a particular type of chicken nugget. Or we've seen, for example, a scheme set up for Ukraine extended to Gaza, which doesn't take much of a look at a map to work out Gaza is not in Ukraine, and other bizarre judgments that have come up. So we've seen activist judges taking this to places where they really shouldn't be going, and therefore it makes eminent sense to review this. And of course, last summer, Rob Jenrick, as part of his leadership campaign, was making clear that, you know, if we were going to get real control over our borders, we did need to look at removing some of these areas that are just being exploited.
Interesting, you said activist judges there. Do you think they are deliberately doing this and being soft on people who can't go back to Albania because their kid doesn't like the chicken nuggets? Or do you think they are just not quite sure what they're doing? Do you think they're deliberately doing this? They're too soft on these migrants, basically?
Yeah, I think it's hard, Dawn, to think that people who've had a long period in a legal career, have studied a law degree and everything else, don't know what they're doing. And for me, it's actually, some of the judgment just showed extremely poor judgment in terms of particularly the Gaza one, the chicken nuggets one. We're seeing some absolutely crazy judgments coming out the courts at the moment that are deliberately looking to frustrate some of the overall agenda. And I think it's absolutely right that we actually have this discussion as well. I think the Lady Chief Justice recently showed some very poor judgment in criticising it being debated in Parliament. So, no, it's absolutely right we're having this debate. It's been driven, it has to be said, by Robert Jenrick, Reform, by Kemi Badenoch saying that she'll force a vote on these issues. So, you know, let's remember, this isn't just something Yvette Cooper's got up in the morning and thought she wants to do. It's been a combination of there's a clear narrative, public are not happy at all, and obviously some of the absolutely ridiculous cases we've seen recently that brought this whole system into disrepute.
Kevin, you're the standard answer now whenever you talk to anyone that was a Conservative Party member. 14 years, you didn't stop the boats, the situation has carried on getting worse. So what gives you the right now to be critical of what Yvette Cooper is trying to do?
Well, to be honest, Dawn, I'm sort of welcoming partly that she's going to do some of this. And I was one of the ones who wanted to see us go down the Greek path, which is having accommodation centres on arrival, speeding up removals. Of course, we have to actually be able to remove people to somewhere, because even if we remove some of the nonsense that's going on around human rights, we've still got to have somewhere we can actually send people. And that's where Rwanda came in on things like those countries like Afghanistan, Syria, where it would be very difficult to return someone due to the regimes that are in those countries. So, yes, it's something we're welcome to do. It's something that we should have gone further on whilst we're in government. But, yeah, clearly, if the government wants to change the law in a way that will put an end to some of these abuses, the Conservative Party should support it. But it's been notable that the last year, the initial reaction from Labour when, for example, Rob Jenrick last year was saying we should be looking to do this and leave the ECHR, it wasn't quite so welcome as but now they seem to have discovered that it makes sense to do so.
Just very quickly, Kevin, you mentioned Rob Jenrick there several times. He's come out with very, very powerful comments on this story and several other stories at the moment. Do you think he'd be a better leader than Kemi Badenoch?
Well, I supported Rob, but Kemi won, and we all now need to focus on the Labour Party and what the Labour government's doing. And that won't always be opposing. You know, for example, if they come up with some sensible plans to end some of the nonsense going on in human rights, hence us having this conversation. They're saying they're going to review it. Let's see what they actually put up. So, you know, I was someone, I voted for Rob in the leadership contest. I'm delighted to see what he's doing as Shadow Justice Secretary, and it's no surprise people are looking at that and saying they'd like to see more of it from the rest of the Conservative Party.
Indeed. Kevin Foster, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to talk to you. That's former Conservative Immigration Minister Kevin Foster there. OK, now I'm Dawn Neeson. I have to keep reminding myself, just in case. I don't. Actually, I do know. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Now, this story's going to annoy you. It annoys me. The number of over 65s heading to A&E have soared by 90,000. Is Labour to blame for taking away that winter fuel payment and putting more old folk in hospital? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Time for a hot cuppa, especially if you're an older person. We'll see you very soon.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As a steak and ale is the most popular one. That's the one that's in the British Pie Awards. We've got chicken. We do a just steak. All the steak is slow cooked overnight, and then we shred it and mix it with Tracy's signature gravy. We've also now been able to put fruit pies on, and we do quiches as well.
This family-run pie shop in Dinnington is going for a big win at the British Pie Awards. The busy South Yorkshire store has only been open for 6 weeks, and already it's hoping for a prize for its pies.
It's British tradition. You know, it lets especially independent people like us to get his name out there, especially if we win the award. Everybody loves a good pie, especially with we do meals with the mash and the chips and the peas and the gravy. We'll put baked beans on if they want them. It's just tradition, isn't it? Everybody loves a good pie.
For the customers here, pies are one of Britain's best dishes.
They're always full of goodness, aren't they? Hearty, filling, and you could put them with so many things, different vegetables, different types of potatoes. Yeah, just good all-rounder.
Feel good food, innit? Pies, yeah. It's not like takeaway food, it's just feel good food. Feel at home,
If it's got a nice filling and a nice pastry, there's nothing better. But just like them, the easy meals. My family love all the pies here. I've come in about 3 times a week this week, especially the quiches that you can see coming out of the oven. They're freshly made, you can take them home and freeze them.
So here we go, we've got the Handmade Pie Company's steak and ale pie, the one that's been entered for the awards. Let's give it a try. That is absolutely delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hello there and welcome back. Now, the number of over 65s heading to A&E soared by more than 90,000 this winter as Labour stripped millions of pensioners of that, yes, the winter fuel payments. We remember that one, don't we? Analysis of official NHS figures show that there were over 94,000 more attendees at A&E departments among those over 65 in England this winter than in the years 2023 to 24. Now, right, OK, we are waiting for a guest to talk on this one, but they are not quite there yet. So remember this, don't we? I mean, 10 million people, the most vulnerable pensioners, were deprived of that 300 quid. And financially, it didn't even make any sense, because if all of them had applied for pension credits, which the form is really, really complicated and they didn't, the money the government made would have been wiped out. OK, stop waffling, Dawn. Let's go to the guest. We have now one of our viewers, William Pick, up to talk about this story with you. William, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, are you shocked by the number of over 65s heading to A&E is soared by 90,000 this winter? I wonder how much that's got to do with the winter fuel allowance being taken away.
It will have something to do with it, but it doesn't shock me. I mean, we are an ageing population, and as people get older, they get sicker. They can't get to the GPs very easily. So A&E is the first place they pretty much call on now if they think it's serious.
I mean, that is the case. But, I mean, over 65s use A&E every year. But this year in particular has been higher.
Yeah, I think we've had quite a lot of people suffering high levels of flu. And I do think it's a response to the fact that they can't get to see a GP within 3 weeks. And I think if you go on the NHS website, everything seems to end with go to A&E. So I think to some extent they might need to relook at the guidance on their own website.
I mean, my mum's in her 80s now, so and I tried to do this form for her where she was going to get pension credit. I gave up halfway through, and I'm not that old. But it was very, very complicated. Have you got any personal experience or anyone you know that has had problems with their heating and is really suffering?
Yes, I do. It's very, very difficult. I mean, the biggest problem with the way that Labour have gone about this is they've given no notice. They announced it in October. Winter is upon us. If they'd have given people a year's notice, they could have actually saved a little bit extra per month, overpaid a little bit on their bills every month. So they had a little bit of a war chest come the winter. But none of that was given to them. At the same time as saying, well, if you really need it, it's only those on pension credit that really need it. Well, that's not true either. And to get pension credit, you've got to fill in, I don't know, 350 questions. Well, That's not going to happen for a lot of pensioners.
It was actually 247. I know I did try. I got to about 180 and then I just gave up. It started asking my mum about her love life, which I really wasn't going to go down that particular road. William, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Appreciate it. OK, now let's see what my panel make of this one. Matthew, the number of over 65 heading to A&E soared by more than 90,000 this winter. Yeah, obviously more older people go to A&E during the winter, but this is up on any previous year.
Yeah, and people can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we had one of the more milder winters.
It has been mild, yeah.
So I don't know if the winter fuel will have had a big impact. I think electorally it's totally stupid, but I'm not sure if it's more complicated than that. I think also as people get older, they tend to get iller and sicker. Their immune systems aren't as strong as they once were. And I think part of the problem is because we don't have GPs in this country that are training in time, and we have loads of GPs that are closing down. And I think if you cannot access a GP, it's only going to place the strain on A&E, because if you're not well, you've got nowhere else to go. You know, you're going to go there as a last resort. So I think that might have more to play on it than the winter fuel, personally.
OK. Recent modelling by the Department for Work and Pensions, it showed that 100,000 pensioners in England and Wales could be forced into relative poverty by 2027 as a result of Labour's cuts to winter fuel payments. Henry, you've just had a birthday. I'm not going to say how old you are. Belated happy birthday for 2 days ago. But does this government hate pensioners? Not implying you're a pensioner.
No, I'm not there yet. It feels as though it hates everybody, or it's doesn't care about vast swathes of the population. But as I said earlier in the programme, people are already suffering enough. Financially, their time, there are so many complications, and no wonder anxiety and stress is increasing, and you have mental health problems, which costs us more money and disability benefits. But I think Matthew's absolutely right. You know, you try and get a doctor's appointment, and they'll say ring at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for an emergency appointment, and you go, well, and then you ring. If you ring 111, if you get a routine appointment, you're going to be waiting 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks. If you ring 111, then they'll go through their checklist. I think the 3 times that I've rung 111, you end up with them saying, well, you should go to A&E. So I think that's exactly right, Matthew. You know, we've got fewer and fewer doctors per head of population, GPs. A lot of the money, I mean, the GP surgeries have changed out of all recognition over the last 40, 50 years. I'm old enough to remember that. And so I think we've just got a broken system. And actually, I applaud Labour's move to do away with NHS England and sort of consolidate it. But then again, the devil's in the detail. I don't know exactly what they're planning to do instead. But maybe, there's the potential for the right thing there. So, I think this, again, the answer is not to increase the capacity of A&E. The answer is in diagnosing the problem and where it actually lies. People are going to A&E because they've got no other recourse. That's the problem.
Yeah, and it is a horrible experience going to A&E.
No, totally. It's miserable, as we all know. Even in my relatively younger lifetime, I've seen the waiting time in A&Es go up and up and up from when I was a kid with football injuries up until the present day. I think the reason I don't see it improving anytime soon, though, as well, is I think the social contract is broken in this country, and we can see, either anecdotally or statistically, younger people are leaving in their droves for other countries because they don't see a future here for themselves. So why would you train to be a doctor to practice here when you're struggling to get on the housing ladder, when the hours you feel underpaid and overworked? You're going to go elsewhere, and also the weather's nicer in Australia.
Well, indeed, there is that. We've run out of time on that debate as well. I'm Jordan Easton. This is GBNews. News. Lots more coming up on today's incredibly packed shows. We're squishing so much in, aren't we? A retired circus elephant has been seen mourning and trying to comfort her partner of over 25 years. It's such a sad story, but it's a lovely story. But first, let's get the news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Dawn, thank you. Your headlines at 2:34. Sir Keir Starmer has said military chiefs will meet in the UK next week as plans for a peacekeeping force in Ukraine move into an operational phase. It comes after the Prime Minister hosted a virtual Coalition of the Willing summit this morning for world leaders to discuss peacekeeping in Ukraine. Representatives from 26 countries were in attendance at the meeting, including Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and French President Emmanuel Macron. Sakir urged world leaders to be prepared to defend a potential peace deal.
President Zelensky has shown once again, and beyond any doubt, that Ukraine is the party of peace. Volodymyr has committed to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, but Putin is trying to delay, saying there must be a painstaking study before a ceasefire can take place. Well, the world needs action, not a study, not empty words and conditions. So my message is very clear. Sooner or later, Putin will have to come to the table. So this is the moment. Let the guns fall silent. Let the barbaric attacks on Ukraine once and for all stop.
Meanwhile, President Zelensky has been speaking at a news conference in Kyiv this afternoon, saying the question of territory is complicated and should be discussed later. In other news, the Russian captain of the container ship which crashed into a US oil tanker in the North Sea has been remanded in custody. Earlier today, Vladimir Motin appeared at Hull Magistrates Court, charged with gross negligence manslaughter in relation to the collision between the two vessels earlier this week. Filipino national Mark Angelo Pania has been named as a missing crew member who is now presumed dead. Now, 5 people have been charged in connection with the fatal shooting of a 40-year-old mother in South Wales. Joanne Penny died after being shot on the 9th of March in Talbot Green. Police said they were considering several lines of inquiry, including that Miss Penny could have been a victim of mistaken identity. 5 people, 2 women and 3 men, have now been charged in connection with her death. The United States has expelled South Africa's ambassador for being a race-baiting politician who hates America. Posting on social media platform X, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said Ebrahim Rasool is no longer welcome in our great country because he hates America and the President of the United States. The rare move is the latest development in rising tensions between the two countries. Meanwhile, the Office for South Africa's president called the decision regrettable, adding that the country remained committed to building a mutually beneficial relationship with America. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, welcome back. Plenty more coming up on today's show, but before I tell you what we've got, Nana has joined us in the studio and she always has a cracking show. This one's going to be very special, though. Nana, what you got?
Well, Dawn, you spoke about Sacha Bailey earlier in your show. He's actually coming in. He is basically saying that men are transitioning because they want to be more like women, but it is dangerous. He said it's a dangerous ideology. He's somebody who wanted to transition at one point and then has now realised that that's a bad idea, and he's met someone and she's pregnant now, so he's enjoying the idea of being a father and all of that. So it'll be very interesting to hear why he wrote the piece, what the piece is all about. He'll be live in the studio just after 5 o'clock. I'll also be looking and asking you the question about Keir Starmer. Is he a help or a hindrance to peace? Today he had his little discussion, didn't really answer any questions. No. It was all a bit, yeah, but no, but yeah, but no. Reminded me a bit of Vicky Pollard. So, you know, is what he's saying, is he just politically posturing? In the meantime, of course, my niggle is on all of that, because it seems to be that now that's in our eye line, we're not really focusing on our own situation in this country, which is dire in terms of the economy. So I'll be bringing all that to you in the next few minutes or so.
That sounds a smash. You don't want to miss that one. Nana, thank you very much. That's at 3 o'clock. You don't go anywhere, because Nana is straight after this show. Now, it's all kicking off outside the Tesla Centre at Park Roll today. Protesters have been gathered, urging people to boycott the brand over Elon Musk's controversial political views, shall we say. So joining me now is motoring journalist and car dealer Danny Kelly, friend of the channel, friend of all of us. Danny, the brilliant story just quickly the other day. Tesla driver on the radio phoned up and said that a woman on a cycle, a push bike going past him with pink hair, obviously, had literally stuck 2 fingers up at him and called him a Nazi because he was driving a Tesla. What's going on?
Wow. Well, at least it's not like it is in Germany, Dawn, because 4 Teslas have been burnt to the ground by people who are protesting. So what they're doing, it's a global thing, started in America. In fact, at one dealership in America, shots have been fired through the glass and through the cars. Thank God we don't have the Second Amendment. So on our screen, you can see these lefties saying, honk if you hate Elon. And some Tesla owners, and there you go, look at this, another fascist nonsense, one lunatic, is showing motorists in London. I mean, it's just so palpably, demonstrably untrue about this fascist baloney, but that's the world we live in 2025. Some people are saying boycott Musk and boycott Teslas. Well, let me tell you, Dawn, it's quite easy not to buy Teslas anymore because Teslas are no longer the market leaders. So there will be some conscientious objectors to people buying these Teslas, but they can do so smug in the knowledge that Teslas really aren't that good anymore, and there are much better comparisons out there. But this started in America, it spread around the rest of the world, and as I said earlier, in Germany, 4 Tesla owners woke up today to basically the combustion. All of a sudden, there is a combustion engine in an electric car, and it's been using petrol after all. Petrol and a match, though.
And people are trying to hide the fact they're actually driving a Tesla, even though Teslas are very, very recognisable, by sort of like covering the badges up.
Yeah, so what they're doing, again, just to show the virtuous side of life, what they're doing, they're removing the Tesla badges. You can see one on the screen. Yeah. It's being covered with an Audi, the 4 rings of the Audi badge. Ironically, though, it may invalidate your insurance because your insurance says that you've got to make them aware of any modifications. And if all of a sudden someone who really loves Elon Musk was to scratch "I love Elon" on the side of the car, well, the insurers would say, well, look, you're making a political statement here, and you've modified your car, and we're going to invalidate that. We're not going to pay out. It's something that it's a contagion, though, isn't it? And it's always on the left side of politics, where people try and go out of their way to show that they are the more caring type of character in the world. Yeah. And politics and business don't mix. You know, normally it's on the other side, go woke, go broke, but now we've seen something on the other side of politics as well.
Hashtag be kind, Danny. Thank you very much. That's motoring journalist and car dealer Danny Kelly. Right, OK. Now, my favourite story of the day is sad, but a retired circus elephant has been mourning and trying to comfort her partner of it's a female elephant, 2 female elephants, over 25 years. They worked together for 25 years. The elephant collapsed and passed away. There you can see a picture. Jenny and Magda, the elephants, were performing partners in Russia for over 25 years. When Jenny passed away this week, Magda refused to let veterinarians near her for several hours as she hugged the elephant. I mean, look at those pictures there. It's just so, so sad. But I didn't know this, that elephants are some of the most intelligent animals on Earth, and they they show empathy for one another. They mourn their dead, as you can see there. They are also one of the only other species that actually try to bury their dead like we do. Oh. And if there's any twigs or branches lying around, they will try and cover the bodies of their loved ones. And you can just see this is mourning. This is what we do, isn't it? You know, she's trying to hug her, she's trying to comfort her. And it's just so incredibly sad. Look, trying to hold her tight. If you're listening on the radio, please do. It's on Google, it's on social media. Have a look at this and Google the Magda the elephant. And she is, look, oh my God, now she's trying to hug. It's just incredibly emotional. And I'm sorry if you're listening on the radio, but do please have a look. I think we're going to put it on our website as well, GB News. But yeah, so we're leaving that there. But look, that is incredibly sad. Any case, you want to cheer yourself up with some winter sun, I've got the answer for you. Here's a forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Storm Lawrence brings some unsettled weather across western parts of Europe, heavy rain and some thunderstorms. A little more settled across parts of Greece, but temperatures are going to cool off. Highs of around 20 to 21 Celsius on Sunday, but turning much cooler through the middle part of the week. As we head further west, we can see there's plenty of showers, some of these heavy bringing in some thunderstorms, and Storm Lawrence just this low out across the Azores, bringing in some heavy outbreaks of rain later on Sunday and into Monday. Largely settled through the middle part of the week, but turning cooler for Santorini.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Well, for the rest of this weekend, most of us, it should be fairly dry, a mixture of cloud and sunshine out there. But under the cloud, it is still going to be feeling fairly chilly. So we've got this area of high pressure really firmly in charge across the UK, but this weather front across Scotland will be an area of cloud and some patchy rain. But away from that zone, really, it's a fairly quiet day. You could just see a few showers just coming in from the North Sea, with perhaps the best of the sunshine down towards East Anglia and the southeastern corner of England. So in the sunshine, we will see highs reaching into double figures, so not feeling too bad, but if you're stuck under that cloud, I think temperatures will probably fairly struggle up to 8 or 9 degrees. So into this evening, zooming in across parts of Scotland, we've still got this area of cloud and some outbreaks of rain as we see at Saturday afternoon. For southern Scotland though, some late sunshine here, maybe also some brighter spells developing for Northern Ireland and Northern England. And for the rest of England and Wales, again, probably the cloudiest skies over towards the west with the best late sunshine across the far east. And very little changes as we go through the course of the night. That area of cloud across Scotland will sink its way a little bit further southwards, but I think the best of the clear skies overnight will be across southern areas. So it's here where we'll probably see the lowest temperatures tonight. Fairly widespread frost across the very far south. Temperatures maybe as low as -4 or -5 in the countryside. But it's here as we start Sunday morning. We'll see plenty of sunshine during the day. It may well cloud up a little bit as the day goes on, but I think throughout the course of the afternoon, that's where we see the best of the sunshine. Also a little bit brighter for Scotland compared to today. But again, we could just see a few spots in the wind here and there thanks to the thicker cloud. Temperatures tomorrow very similar to today.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Our final 10 minutes together. Thank you so much for your company. I love, love, love having you with me on a Saturday afternoon. Now, a long-awaited rocket with a replacement crew for 2 stranded NASA astronauts has finally launched to the International Space Station. US astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams have been stuck on the International Space Station for 9 months, having had their journey home repeatedly pushed back. You could actually have a baby in that time. I don't even want to go into the technical side of all of that sticky stuff, but 9 months, that's a long time. Joining me now is space and planetary scientist Andy Lound. Andy, you are such an expert on this stuff. OK, so these people are finally getting rescued.
They're not being rescued. I mean, the press, the media have really pushed this. They're stranded. No, they're not. They've had an extended stay is really the best way of putting it. And the reason why they've had the extended stay is because when their spacecraft, which they were testing, which was the Orion spacecraft, it was deemed unsafe for that to come back with a crew on board because it was still under test and they weren't sure what would happen with it. They decided to bring that back on its own, which meant that they had to stay on the space station. And their decision then was how to bring them back. And they decided they would actually make them part of Crew 9. Crew 9 was going to launch with 4 people on board. It only launched with 2. So Williams and Wilmore then became members of that crew and started to do the work that the other 2 people would have done. And that was just an easier way of organising it. And then they would come back on the scheduled flight, which was the replacement flight, which is mission 10, which has just gone up to the space station now. And so it was decided really just to change the schedules a little bit so they weren't stranded. And I think this is something that needs to be picked up quite a lot here. It's the nature of the game, but they have been 9 months since they're up there instead of 8 days. But there were 2 very professional, very, very experienced astronauts. So they would be able to cope.
I'm sorry, look, I'm sorry. I would not want to just pop out for like a week and end up coming back 9 months later. To me, that sounds like stranded, Andy.
No, well, stranded has the implication that they're in trouble, and it isn't. They're not in trouble in that sense. I mean, to be quite honest, getting stranded on the International Space Station for 9 months, for me, sounds like a dream come true, frankly, because of the work you could actually carry out up there. So that'd be good. It's interesting that Elon Musk did point out that he did make an offer to NASA to do a separate launch of a spacecraft to actually just bring them back. And NASA turned that down. But that might have been due from NASA's point of view for costs as much as anything else, because they still have to pay for it. I don't think Elon Musk was offering that for free. And they said, no, we're not doing that. But it could have been done. So they're not stranded in the sense they couldn't have been brought back, because a Dragon could have been sent up, as Musk pointed out, and bring them back anytime they wanted to.
Andy, thank you so much. Always a joy talking to you. Andy Lound, space expert. He even has toys. Well, I've been Dawn Neeson. This has been GB News. Huge thanks to Henry Bolton and Matthew Torbett, and especially huge thanks for you, for your company. And Nana's up next, and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. But first, let's have a look at the weather. See you later.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house.
Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. Looking ahead over the coming days, most of us, it should be fairly dry. A mixture of some cloud and also some sunshine, and towards the middle of next week it does look like it will turn increasingly warmer. So out there at the moment, we've still got this area of high pressure firmly in charge. This weak weather front, though, will continue to produce some spots of rain as it sinks its way southwards across Scotland. Across much of England and Wales, it should be fairly dry, clearest of the skies across southeast England, East Anglia, down towards the southwest. So a widespread frost here as we start Sunday morning. Could see lows in the countryside falling down to -4 or -5 degrees. Could also see a few mist and fog patches first thing, but under the mid-March sunshine, they will quickly melt away. So by the time most people are up on Sunday morning, I think plenty of sunshine to greet us. A little bit more cloud for the Midlands, North Wales, and especially so for Northern Ireland, where we could see a few spots of rain courtesy of that weak weather front. But for Scotland, a much brighter story here compared to Saturday. But again, still the risk of a few showery outbreaks of rain coming in from the north from time to time. So moving throughout the day, the best of the sunshine always going to be across southern counties of England. But for Western Scotland, actually here, also a fairly decent day. Elsewhere, I think more in the way of cloud than sunshine, and that cloud will be thick enough in places to produce the odd spot of rain, but nothing too heavy, really, as we go through the course of the day. Temperatures for most reaching high single figures under the cloud, potentially double figures where we do see the sunnier skies. Into the evening, very little changes. Most